La-di-da-di-da. It's the D-O-double-G. Snoop Dogg. La-di-da-di-da. Rocking with the D-R-E. All right.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock. Welcome to Daybreak. I'm Commissioner Wolborn.
And I'm Janetta Lowe. We appreciate you waking up with us bright and early on your Wednesday morning. Matt's in for Todd this morning. Corey Ventura keeping us around any traffic trouble that may involve your morning commute. Happy Wednesday, everybody.
Hump day.
It is Wednesday.
There it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're here.
It's sweater weather in the morning.
Sweater
For
weather.
sure.
For sure.
Sweater
And then
weather.
a little warm in the
Yes.
afternoon.
And look, we're ready. We're here. You
Yes.
know, we're fall. You're still giving spring, but it's okay. You know.
Wait, did she just low-key shade me?
You're so cute.
First, hold on. First of all,
Okay, hold on, wait.
Hey, I feel
what
like
I'm
summer.
giving.
It's summer.
No. What I'm giving with my purple and deep fuchsia
Okay.
is any season. See, fall is transitional.
There you go.
She said my whole name. Okay.
Let me
She stood
take
up
a
to
seat.
show you the whole thing.
And we love
I
it
did.
fashionable no matter the season, okay?
I did. I did.
Fall brings many colors. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I do want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sundays. Welcome back, guys. Happy Fun Day Sunday. I wanted to show that clip because I thought that was kind of funny. The woman there in the pink shirt is similar to me in the sense that it doesn't matter to me if it's fall or winter. I will still wear bright colors. I think bright colors are very cheery. So that news segment has been making its way around on social media, throwing shade and getting knocked down. Very interesting. Very interesting. I thought it was a great way to start out the Sunday show because, you know, on Sundays we tend to be a little bit lighter. We don't tend to have as heavy stories. I try not to have as heavy stories on Sunday, but yeah. So figured it was a good way to start things out. Pink in the fall. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And we have quite a bit to discuss this Sunday evening. Tonight's show is the next episode. And I was listening to my 90s playlist, 90s, early 2000 playlist on Spotify earlier today. And the next episode song from Dr. Dre and Snoop came on. And I was like, you know what? That's a good theme for tonight's show, because a lot of times I think we tend to focus on the past or even the present and not thinking about, okay, what is the next episode, right? Like we're focusing on reruns. And I think what you're going to see tonight with these stories in particular is that this is now moving to the next episode. And one story in particular is not a next episode, but people miss the rerun. People miss the rerun, and we'll get into all of that. But I love that song. I hope you guys really like that song too. It's one of my favorites, I think, by Snoop and Dr. Dre, because they were letting you know that, yeah, you know, we did the Chronic album, but now we're moving on to something different. You know, so that's the whole next episode. Compton, Long Beach, Inglewood, Snoop Dogg. I love that song. Love it. Love it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and first and foremost, let's give a shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate you, fam. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies. I'm still in my mind laughing about the pink shirt because we also have a group called Members as well. And you can see all their names here. And you'll also see their name scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. So thank you so much. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Really do appreciate you, fam. Also, quick thank you to everyone who attended the mutual aid workshop on Saturday. I did send the recording out to you guys. You should have received that a couple of minutes ago. So you'll have that for your records and you can refer back to it as much as you want. I already see we got Callie in the house. DC said Callie is in the house. All right. All right. There's a lot of people that watch that are in California. Many of you, I noticed that when we do the call-in after the show, like once a week, we do a call-in segment. I notice there's a lot of people in California. So yeah. We got so much to get into tonight. Let's go ahead and show you that thumbnail, ladies and gentlemen, so you can see what we are discussing tonight. We're actually starting off with some really good news. Some really good news. And that's one of the bonus stories. Yeah. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing Charlie Kirk shooting wild update. You'll see that as Tyler Robinson right there next to Charlie Kirk. We have an update. Tyler Robinson's trial is just around the corner, at least the first court appearance. I do have an update about that I'm going to give you guys, which is kind of cuckoo. We also have an update about one of the characters at that shooting that people are starting to ask questions about. I didn't notice it before, but shout out to James Lee, who is drawing more attention to that. We're going to get into that as well. And we're also going to break down the fact that should the FBI really be involved with this case? We'll go through that as well. We're also going to discuss, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not heard the news, Hakeem Jeffries has just endorsed Zohran Mandami. Is this a real, true grit endorsement? And why is he doing it now, right? So a last minute endorsement. I'm going to tell you what I think this is really about, what Hakeem is up to here. We're also going to discuss there are new numbers that just came in about Trump's support. And it looks as though he is not doing as well with Latino voters, including the ones who supported him in 2024. Things are shifting here. We're also going to discuss Mehdi Hassan, Jesus Christ. I know a lot of you are not on Twitter. I still call it Twitter, sorry. A lot of you are not on there, but Mehdi Hassan has been getting heavily attacked by Matt Walsh and other conservatives. And this actually is not just about Mehdi Hassan. I'm going to tell you what I think they're trying to do. I think people are trying to shift a narrative here. And I'm going to tell you what they're trying to take your attention away from and what they're trying to get you to focus on. What is going on with these smears and these slanders that are coming out against the Muslim community at this point in time? So we're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss, oh my God, Bernie Sanders was on Tim Dillon's podcast and he made a statement about immigration that has a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters asking what the hell happened to Bernie Sanders. But I would say that nothing happened to Bernie Sanders. And if people have been paying attention, they would have known that he always, as long as I can remember, had that position about immigration. And we'll get into all of that. I'm going to show you some older footage as well to show you he always had that position. And then we have a bonus story, and it's a good one. Ireland has a new president, a new anti-Zionist president. And let's just say the Zionists are not happy that this woman won. And she didn't just win, she won in a landslide. And I think that's a sign for what could be possible going forward, maybe also in politics in America as well. Again, the theme is the next episode, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go ahead and la-di-da-di-da our way into the first story. If you haven't had a chance to do so, please do me a favor and smash that like button. Thank you. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. All righty, let's get into that jam. Oh, really quick, I forgot to shout out the members. Shout out to Curly Girl for becoming a new member. And also shout out to Iceland Sidhay. I'm so sorry, Iceland Sidhay. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Shout out to both of them for becoming Sabby members. Give them a big whoop, whoop. Yeah, in the house. Okay, let's get into this first story, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's really good, really positive one. If you have not heard, Ireland has a new president who was anti-Zionist, who did not mince words with Israel and Netanyahu, and so much more. Let's go ahead and get into it. Like I said, the Zionists are not happy about this one.
Ireland has elected a new president, independent candidate Catherine Connolly. She secured 63% of the vote and has vowed to be an inclusive president.
Ireland's next president arrives at Dublin Castle after a landslide victory. Catherine Connolly will be the country's 10th president, the third woman to occupy the office.
I will be an inclusive president to listen to all of you. I will be making no distinction on the basis of votes.
In a two-horse race, Catherine Connolly saw off the challenge of a former cabinet minister, Fine Gael's Heather Humphreys, who conceded a defeat that was inevitable from the first opening of the ballot boxes.
It is strong, isn't it?
Lovely. Catherine Connolly is a 68-year-old barrister and independent politician from Galway, a liberal who united the left. She won many young voters through savvy social media use, revealing...
Pause for a second. She was an independent and she was able to unite the left.
Her keepy-uppy skills, hustle on the basketball court, and that she owns two cats, Cat 1 and Cat 2. Celebrity endorsers include the controversial rap group Kneecap. But this was an election that failed to ignite. There was no mic drop moment. Many voters were unhappy at the unusually small field of candidates in this election, leading to an extremely low turnout and an unprecedented number of spoiled ballots.
Simply because none of the above. They wanted to reject the candidates on the paper and they would have liked a wider choice. And it was a protest vote.
Anti-government mood?
Yes, very much so.
In many ways, this was an election as much about those who didn't run. Potential contenders like Conor McGregor, Bob Geldof and Michael Flatley all failing to get on the ballot. With Fianna Fáil's candidate Jim Gavin dropping out, Fine Gael's candidate roundly defeated, it's been a humbling result for the Irish government.
I hereby declare Catherine Connolly elected to the office of President of Ireland.
That won't bother Catherine Connolly one bit, as she prepares to take the highest office in the land, albeit one that is largely ceremonial in nature.
Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Catherine Connolly. This is a big win for Ireland, and it's also a big win, I would say, for the pro-Palestinian movement, because here we go. Here is a candidate that ran an anti-Zionist, pro-Palestinian campaign, and they were able to win. And it wasn't even close. I'm going to show you what those results were, but she just blew it out of the water. And some may wonder, well, why does this matter to us here in the United States? Well, we need to pay attention to what's happening to politics all over the world, because especially in the West, right? Especially with countries like Ireland or any of the other European countries, because it can kind of like somewhat predict what could be possible here in the United States, right? Like, and I'll give you an example. We did see some of those right-wing politicians win in Germany, and that was kind of a foreshadowing of Donald Trump was probably going to win here. So I think sometimes it's good to pay attention to what is happening there as well. But she was very vocal about what Israel was doing. In fact, Z Squirrel has been on it from day one. Catherine Connolly, the newly elected president of Ireland, brilliant. I don't know why I can't say brilliant today. Brilliantly expresses the pathetic Zionist propaganda smears against her from her opponent during one of the debates, and reveals him and the broader Western media and the political class to be genocidal scum. Just to show you guys, this was one of her opponents.
The Palestine Authority have been very clear that Hamas will not be part of that new Palestine.
At what point did Israel achieve its military objectives? When 20,000 were dead, when 30,000 were dead? You made the comment. So at what point, in your opinion, was the military objective reached?
If I can come back there, my point was, if they were. It's horrific that it happened in the first instance.
We have lost count of how many people that are dead, men, women and children. We refer to them on the RT News. Dozens have died. This is the type of language we're using with a genocide unfolding before our eyes. And we have a duty to ask questions. Who's connected to what? Who's backing up this? How is this happening under our watch? And we can only do that if we take off the blinkers and recognize what's happening. And if we accept genocide as it's unfolding in Palestine, what are the consequences, not just for Palestine, but for humanity? Where do we go next?
All over the world. This is a big win, you guys, again, for the pro-Palestinian movement and for Ireland. And you guys know Ireland's history. Of course, many of them are more likely to go against what Israel is doing. Claire Daly was on the show about a year ago. I think it was last year. Claire Daly was on my show, and she was talking about like why they choose to stand with the Palestinian people because of what happened to them in Ireland. And I think that's important for people to see. And we're talking about moving on to the next episode. I do think that this is the future. I think that it's going to become more normalized for candidates to run against Israel, for candidates to run and say, no, I'm not supporting Israel. You know, we got a free Palestine, fight for the pro-Palestinian movement. We need to normalize that. We need to normalize candidates not taking money from the pro-Israel lobby. And that's why I thought this was such a great story here. Also, again, I said that Z Squirrel is on it. Catherine Connolly, who just won the Irish presidency in a landslide. She goes on to talk about that history did not begin on October 7th.
I come from Ireland, a history of colonisation, and I would be very wary of telling a sovereign people how to run their country. The Palestinians must decide in a democratic way who they want to lead their country.
But after what happened on October the 7th, you think Hamas can have a role?
What happened on October the 7th, I'm on record for condemning. But history did not start on October the 7th. Of
course not.
Well, it's important to point that out and to look back on the history and the many, many atrocities committed by the Israeli government through their army. And so I don't think Keir Starmer should have any say about Hamas. It's up to the Palestinian people. What Keir Starmer and other countries should be doing is stopping the genocide. Absolutely calling out what it is, genocide, and using our voices to stop it.
I'm asking you this morning why you would say Hamas is part of the fabric of the Palestinian people.
I'll try and answer that for you as best I can. They were elected by the people the last time there was an election. Overwhelming support for them back in 2006 or 7. And they are part of the civil society of Palestine. We're reliant on them for figures in relation to the deaths.
Do you
that have
regard
been
them as
backed.
a terrorist organisation?
They are prescribed as a terrorist organisation.
Do you accept that? Do you agree with that designation?
That's the designation. Israel is acting as a terrorist state. Both have to sit down at some stage. I mean, let's look at what Israel are doing and call it out for what it is. They're absolutely out of control.
Yeah, there it is. So I love the fact that she did not water down her position there, even about Hamas. She said they were elected by the people. And we cannot say that enough, right? That yes, these are the people that were elected. But notice that she didn't say, oh, yes, I can. She didn't pull the Pierce Morgan. Yes, I condemn Hamas. She didn't water it down at all. Now, of course, after she has won because of this, she's getting heavily attacked. Back to the squirrel. The pathetic Zionist scum faction of the Irish media and political class ran a hysterical, depraved smear campaign against Catherine Connolly, going especially insane over her stating the basic truism that Hamas is part of the fabric of the Palestinian society, and the Palestinians themselves should democratically decide who their own leaders are. They were hoping they could get her to bow down to them, to renounce her decades of fighting for Palestinian rights and exposing the genocidal Israeli death and rape cult masquerading as a society. But they failed. She did not take back that truism and did not renounce her principles and won in a landslide. Because the Irish have experienced firsthand the genocidal pathologies of settler colonialism and have seen the vast propaganda apparatus used to launder it all as the height of morality and civilization. So they recognize Zionists and their death cult propaganda immediately for what it is. And you can see here, of course, like the media, they're coming after her. They were coming after her before she won. But of course, they're attacking her more now. They put it here. They were like, presidential candidate justifies Hamas. So you guys see these tricks that they have continued to play. And what I thought was interesting here, what Z Squirrel said was this whole thing about the settler colonialism. Yes, so they have experience with that. But then also the fact that she won in a landslide. And this is the part I want to show you the results here. Guys, it wasn't even freaking close. If you look at the totals in Ireland, she received over 900,000 votes, 914,000 votes, as you can see here. Heather Humphreys received over 424,000 and Jim Gavin over 103,000. So I wanted to show you these results because I want you to see what is possible. I want you to see that, yes, it is possible to run a truly unapologetic campaign, calling Israel out for what it is and not mincing words when people say, but do you condemn Hamas? Oh, but October 7th. This woman took it away. And she didn't have to bend the knee. She didn't bend the knee and say, oh, yes, of course I condemn Hamas. She didn't bend the knee and say, well, no, it's not Israel. It's just Netanyahu's government. So this win shows you the next episode. This is what is possible. This is what candidates can do if they just stay true to their message and not try to bend the knee. And again, she was independent. The world, the Zionists in the world, they're afraid of this. They don't like the fact that she won. Not only that she won, but she won in a landslide. This terrifies them that she did so well. This is the good news that should be shared around the world. I do not want this story to be overshadowed because it does show you what is possible. So we are moving to the next episode. No more reruns. No more reruns. And that's what we've seen a lot in electoral politics. It's just rerun after rerun. It's like you're sitting down to watch like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air for the 10th time. We are moving on to a new episode, the next episode, and things are different and times are changing. And this is what is possible. So congrats to Catherine for doing the damn thing. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Ality said, independents need to do this. Absolutely. Absolutely. Rapunzel said, the only bad Irish I know of is Bono. Oh, yeah, I think Bono supports Israel. I think he does. Mr. Human Rights himself. You know, I don't know. Thank you, Sparky. Great work, Sabby. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat. Kimmin said, God damn, that squirrel is awesome. I know. Thank you, Wasim. Boycott, the app to boycott Zio products has also started its own VPN as an alternative Zio-owned VPNs. That is good to know. Yeah, because some of the VPNs are owned like by Israel or Zionist. Jason said, yes, Israel is done. Rome didn't fall in one night. The question is, when they go down, will they use the Samson option? Honestly, I believe they will. Repent is all I can say. Yeah, they're crazy enough to do it. Thank you, Jay. She's also a huge critic of the EU and NATO. We could have this too if we weren't so propagandized. Bingo, bingo. And thank you for this one, Wasim. Zohran, take lessons from President Connolly. It is easy to do this as mayor. Yeah, I mean, she's just not holding back. She didn't mince words and she just took it away. Because here's the thing. They're going to call you names anyway, right? You'll see that when we get to some of the other stories. They're going to call you names anyway. They're going to call you anti-Israel. They're going to say that you're anti-Semitic. They're going to call you all these types of names. And that's why I say it does not make sense to bend the knee in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion. So there you have it, folks. We are moving on to the next story and we are making good time. We're making good time. So this one was kind of funny to me because when we talk about the next episode, something happened recently where Bernie Sanders sat down with an interview with Tim Dillon. And all of a sudden, when the subject of immigration came up, people started losing their shit. I am talking about progressives, Bernie supporters, just like, oh my God, Bernie, what is happening to you? How can you say those things? What are you doing? And I was just kind of surprised because from what I remember, as you will see, Bernie always had that position on immigration. And somehow that just flew over people's heads, people who were supporting Bernie, whether it was 2016, whether it was 2020. So what is everyone in an uproar about? Let's get into it. You know, this is not about the next episode per se. I think some people missed the rerun. They missed the rerun episode, and I'm going to show it to you today. Here it is, folks.
Well, I want to talk about for a minute because Trump's main issue, it was immigration. The migration seems to be the biggest issue in the UK election. It was the biggest issue in the US election. It seems to be a massive issue all over the world. And I wanted to talk, I don't like the ICE raids. They're barbaric. I think showing up to a college graduation and deporting somebody who's there to watch his daughter graduate from college or high school, whatever it is inhumane. But I will point to an article from 2007 in the Wall Street Journal about the Krieger poultry processing plant in Georgia. And what it was after a raid, you had the owners of that company were forced to hire American workers. A lot of them were African-American workers, and then raise wages to around $7 to $9 per hour. And this was the direct result of not having a pool of undocumented labor. I think a lot of people don't like to see people zip-tied in the middle of the street, but they do look at the Biden administration letting in 10 million people, and they're suffering, and their health care doesn't exist or is too expensive. and they're looking at all the people coming in and the justifications for that these are all jobs Americans won't do. The service industry, whether it's manufacturing or landscaping or whatever it is. These jobs, because this is what ever since I've grown up, we've always heard that. These are jobs Americans won't do. Mark Andreessen said recently that the only jobs that won't be replaced by AI are venture capital, which is his job. So my question is there a position that the Democratic Party can take that is obviously anti-people getting dragged out of their houses, but recognizes that citizenship should mean something, that we should have a border, and that, having laws that protect workers is important, and that people employing undocumented workers or illegal labor is driving down wages for Americans?
Pause here for a second. So Tim Dillon, if I remember correctly, I believe Tim Dillon supported Donald Trump, right? So we are seeing a shift here with immigration where even some of those that did support Donald Trump, even Marjorie Taylor Greene called this out on Tim Dillon's podcast, which was that it's not necessarily that they agree with all of Trump's immigration policies. In particular, they're not fond of the ICE raids, the way that it has been handled. So now you're hearing Tim Dillon is having an issue with that as well. It's kind of interesting to me because I'm kind of like, I could have sworn he said this is what he was going to do. I could have sworn Trump said that's what he was going to do. I don't know, maybe not as harshly or whatever, but I don't know what people were expecting. But what has some progressives in an uproar is Bernie Sanders' response to this, that I guess they did not know this about Bernie, about his position on immigration. Listen to this.
You've asked a lot of very important questions, good questions. Let's start off with the basic. So long as we have nation states, right, which we have, you got to have borders, right?
Right.
If you don't have any borders, then you don't have a nation, right? In a sense. So has historically the United States done well under Democrats and Republicans in protecting the border? The answer is no. Trump did a better job. I don't like Trump, but we should have a secure border, and it ain't that hard to do.
Uh-oh. And this is what made people this is what made people, I guess, lose their minds when they heard this, because this clip is circulating around on Twitter, and people were like, what the hell is wrong with Bernie? What are you doing? What are you saying that we should have borders? What do you mean we should have secure borders? What has happened to you? What do you mean the Democrats didn't do it right and you agree with Trump on immigration? Now, obviously, Bernie doesn't support the ICE raids, but people were shocked by this. And I was shocked, not that Bernie said that, but that people who supported and voted for Bernie Sanders weren't aware of his position on immigration. And I say that because Bernie has been talking about this for a long time. I'm even going to show you a video from 10 years ago. 10 years ago. He's always been very vocal about how he felt about the border. He's never agreed to open borders. He also is one of the people that made the case that mass immigration hurts American workers. And see, when people hear Trump say that, they're like, oh, Trump is, he's angry, bad guy or whatever. But Bernie said that too. Bernie has been saying that for years, and somehow it just flew over people's heads. And I'm wondering if it's a little bit of this, that when someone is saying something that is really good to you and gets you excited, is it the possibility that you're so focused on all the other things that they're talking about that makes you excited that you overlook the one thing that you may have an issue with? And I'm seriously just asking. I don't know, because I did think everybody knew that because he was always vocal about it. So he does not think that the Democratic Party did a good job with immigration. And also, he doesn't think Biden did a good job. Let's continue on here.
Biden didn't do it. Those before him did not do it. We should have a secure border, period. I think most people in the Congress agree with that.
Why don't you think he did it, just out of curiosity?
Pardon me?
Why don't you think Biden was more proactive with securing the border?
He did. He did some things. He was not, I think by the end of his term, if my memory is correct, the number of illegal folks coming in had gone down. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that overall it was a good job. It was not. All right. So that's point number one. You need a border, let's have a border. And we have certainly the technology and the manpower to make that happen. Number two, what happens, what is the appropriate response to, we think there are about 10 million undocumented people in the country today. Less than 3% of our population, okay?
There are estimates that are higher, but let's say it's 10.
Those are the best estimates I've seen. Okay. Why did those, let's be clear, those people act, my father came to this country from Poland, came in legally. Yeah. They came in illegally, period. Okay? Yeah. It was illegal. What are most of those people doing right now? Are they?
Oh, working hard.
Good.
Right. None of those people should be faulted for coming here.
Okay.
It should be, we should start faulting people like Steve Wynn, who run a $1 billion hotel on
and exploit them, right?
On illegal labor. And why aren't we enforcing E-Verify?
Good. Yeah. Good. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so you got these folks who came to this country the same reason my dad came to this country. He grew up poor in Poland, came for a better life. And that's why they dragged their kids, from Mexico, Guatemala, thousands of miles, to have a better life, to escape the violence and the poverty that they're in. They're here now. The truth of the matter is, and one of the things that I really, really dislike about Trump, and what demagogues always do, is this country, as we've discussed, has enormous problems. And what demagogues always do, instead of trying to deal with why we have those problems, what are the causes of the problem, what are the solutions, you blame a powerless minority. In Europe in the 30s, it was the Jews, it was gypsies. In this country, it was gays, it was blacks forever, and Latinos, always somebody to blame, rather than dealing with the real issue. So anyway, you got roughly 10 million people in this country, most of whom, by the way, work very hard. And according to a number of studies, the crime rate, Trump goes around, talking about, somebody does, commits a terrible, terrible murder. Trump is talking about, they're lawless, disgusting, subhuman human beings. Look at this crime here. Truth is that the crime rate in communities of undocumented people is lower than the general average. Do you know that?
Well, the crime rate should almost be none, right? If people are coming into America and they are, coming here for a better life, and they're properly screened, the crime rate should almost be nothing.
Well, it is. It's low. All I'm saying is this is not like, it's not like they're criminals. Everyone's a drug addict.
I don't think anyone thinks everyone is a criminal, and I don't think that anyone, but we do have a ton of income inequality, as you've talked about. So assimilating people into this economic structure is difficult. It is inevitable that some people that cannot find work will turn to crime, and I mean that's just inevitable.
But my only point is this: this is not a community that is prone to large amounts of crime. All right, so what do we do? You got 10 million people here. Most of them are working hard. Your point, I think, is well taken.
Yeah,
a lot of employers exploit them.
Yeah,
and by the way, often these people are paying Social Security payroll tax, paying Medicare payroll tax, paying other taxes, and they don't get the benefits for what they pay. By the way,
right.
All right.
But this has always been a Republican issue. Like, this is why I don't understand why the Democratic Party allowed the issue to be kind of to demagogued, because even, yourself, you were out there advocating always for workers' rights.
Right.
And, when somebody talked about open borders, you rightly said that this is something that Koch brothers would love.
That's right.
They were huge proponents of immigration. The Chamber of Commerce, huge proponents of immigration. A lot of, radical libertarians like the Kochs and others, huge proponents of immigration. So when they're bringing all these people in, and whether it's 10 million or more, I mean, I think there are credible estimates that are a bit more, but I don't think it's necessarily about the exact number. But why were Americans told at a certain point that they should not consider certain blue-collar jobs worthy of their time? They should take out student loans and go to a 4-year university, and then a lot of those jobs that were ended up going to people that came into the country legally, and the employers are paying a lot less money. I think there's a lot of people that feel that these pro-business interests brought in a lot of people to increase the profits of their own companies at the expense of people that saw a lot of their jobs shipped overseas.
There's a lot of stuff that's going on.
So long story short, when we get down to the meat of this, right? Like corporations are trying to find ways to cut costs as much as they can because they're greedy. CEOs, they're greedy, right? So what they're going to do is that they are going to find labor that is going to be cheap. At one point in this country, maybe your parents, maybe your grandparents experienced this. I know my grandparents did. At one point in this country, we had a thriving, I say working class, blue collar populace in this country. At one point, it was possible where you could have a factory job and still own a home and have a family. If we look back even at the Great Migration, when we talk about like Black people moving from the South and moving to some of those cities in the North and also in the Midwest, whether it was Chicago, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, et cetera, you know, back when we had a lot of manufacturing still in the United States, go back and look at some of the pictures of Detroit before they moved the jobs. Go back and look at what Detroit used to look like when people had those blue collar jobs and they had homes before these CEOs and these corporations decided they wanted to cut labor, to cut costs, and so that they could put more money in their pocket. It was possible at one point in this country where, yes, you could own a home, you could have kids, and you had that job where you worked in a factory. That was possible. That has changed. A lot of this goes back to the greed at the top. And so when I see people get angry with countries like China and say, oh, China is going to pass the United States, this isn't right. Maybe you shouldn't have sent jobs overseas. Maybe you shouldn't have had all those factories closed so that you could get cheap parts from other countries. And then it wouldn't even be that way. At one point in this country, that was possible. It was possible for people to raise a family off of those types of jobs and own a home. Now we're looking at days where people graduate from college, hoping their job isn't taken by AI. Let's really talk about it. Have student loan debt, can't buy a home, can't put a down payment on a home, and they're living in shoebox apartments with 3 and 4 roommates. So something changed. Let's go on a little bit more here, and then I'm going to show you the past, what I call the reruns.
One of the things, in my view, I mean, for people like the Koch brothers, that was their goal. It was cheap labor, but I think where we are right now, I mean, is you have X number, whatever it is. I think my understanding is about 10 million. What do we do? And the answer is, I think right now, and where Congress has failed, although there have been bipartisan efforts, is obviously comprehensive immigration reform.
Right.
And in my view, a path towards citizenship. And we have failed in that regard. I think that right now, that is the goal that Congress should set upon itself.
We'll pause it here. You can watch the full interview on Tim Dillon's channel. But what I want to add is, there should be comprehensive immigration reform. But don't you think it's kind of interesting that all these years and all these different presidents that we've had, that hasn't been done? Don't you think it's interesting that every presidential election, I mean, we can go all the way back decades, go all the way back to Ronald Reagan. You can watch the videos yourself. And he had a very different, a more, I think, generous approach when it came to immigration. So did George H. Bush. If you go back and watch those debates of his as well, don't you think it's interesting that nobody fixed this issue? I wonder why. So when we talk about the next episode, right, for Bernie, this particular situation, I think that people miss the rerun. So you can't move on to the next episode if you haven't seen the reruns. So we're going to go back 10 years ago when Bernie Sanders used to call into Tom Hartman's show. So people are going to look a little bit different. This is Tom Hartman back in the day. And I want you to hear what Bernie Sanders said about immigration 10 years ago. This is the rerun.
Last caller was asking your thoughts on immigration
in general. Yeah. So let me divide it in two parts. Richard, number one, we have about 11 million undocumented workers, people in this country. Some of them have been here for many, many years. It is my strong view that we need a path towards citizenship for those people. But I think the second part of your question asked about, I think, the guest worker program is what I think you were referring to. And they have programs like the H-2A program, the H-1B program. And I have historically had real concerns about those programs. We have heard from a lot of high-tech workers, people involved in computer programming and so forth, who are saying, this program, this guest worker program, is bringing in folks from Russia and other countries at lower wages than American workers in the high-tech industry get.
Pause. 10 years ago, Bernie Sanders expressed on Tom Hartman's show his concern that he had about H-1B visa programs. And somehow this was missed. That's why I'm kind of taking a step back, and I saw the responses on social media, people calling out Bernie Sanders and say, how dare you say this about immigration? He's been saying this. He's been saying it for years. And another thing I think that some people may not want to admit, if you look back at the history when it comes to socialism, one of the things that socialists in the past have argued is that this does affect wages for the people who are already in that country. And see, I feel like, again, somehow this is just all skipped over. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with what was said, but I was surprised to see that people did not know this about Bernie. Let's continue.
And I have serious concerns about that, and I've offered amendments to deal with that issue. The second part of it is that there is in the immigration bill language that would bring in a lot of low-wage workers, unskilled workers, and that I have had a very difficult time understanding. When we have youth unemployment in this country, where if you're white and you're 17 to 20 and you're a high school graduate or a dropout, it's 33%. If you're Hispanic, it's 36%. If you're black, it's 51%. These kids desperately need jobs, and they need jobs starting at the very bottom so that they can eventually get the experience and work their way up. And I just don't know why we need to be bringing in a whole lot of other folks who are not skilled at low-wage jobs. So that has been a concern of mine.
Don't that sound similar to what Donald Trump said when he said we don't want to bring in the low-skilled workers, even though, Donald Trump says whatever, he's full of it too, because he brought in the Afrikaners, right? He's like, oh, they're farmers, they're good people, let's go ahead and bring them in. He did that as a favor to Elon Musk. But doesn't that sound similar when Donald Trump made that same comment and he said that we want the workers that are the high-skilled workers, not the low-skilled workers? Now, here's my question. For those who supported Bernie Sanders and you called out Donald Trump for making that comment, how do you feel about the fact that Bernie was making that comment before Donald Trump was? This is 10 years ago. And this isn't the oldest instance of it. He's been saying this for years. So you see, this is the problem when people get into these parties and they're like, I want to call out my own.
I got into the last immigration bill passed the Senate, which alleviated some of my concerns a little bit, was an amendment for $1.5 billion, which would provide jobs and educational opportunities for young people. Right now, it is summertime. You have a lot of kids hanging out on street corners. They should be working. There's enough work to be done. We should provide them with jobs. So that's kind of my view on that issue, Richard.
So 10 years ago, talking to Tom Hartman, and here are other examples as well. I just want people to see this.
I wonder how it could be that with a supposed scarcity of workers out there, that wages and benefits are going down. The guest worker provisions in this bill, which will bring many hundreds of thousands of lower wage workers into this country, will only make a bad situation even worse. And I think at a time when the middle class is shrinking, the last thing we need is to bring over a period of years millions of people into this country who are prepared to lower wages for American workers.
The idea that in the United States of America today, we need more people to come from other countries who will work at high-tech jobs, whether it's computer programming or other information technology jobs, because we just don't have the workers in America.
I'll just pause this so you can see the date. This is 2007.
America is absolute nonsense.
On one hand, you have large multinationals trying to shut down plants in America, move to China, and on the other hand, you have the service industry bringing in low-wage workers from abroad. The result is the same. Middle class gets shrunken and wages go down.
I support immigration reform. I think we need comprehensive immigration reform. The one area where I am concerned about, and I've played an active role, is I don't want to see companies utilizing guest worker programs to lower wages for American workers.
Corporate America is kind of using immigration reform as a means to continue their effort to lower wages in the United States of America, and we must not allow that to happen.
Is it really true that we can't find American workers to do those jobs? Frankly, I don't believe it.
Open borders.
That's a Koch brothers proposal. The
Really?
idea, of course, I mean, that's a right-wing proposal which says essentially there is no United States.
But
Bernie Sanders said here in 2015 that open borders is a Koch brothers agenda. He said it was a right-wing thing. It's interesting. He said it was a right-wing thing, but he said it is a Koch brothers agenda.
Anybody
It
can,
would make a
excuse
lot
me,
of global poor richer, wouldn't it?
and it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state. What these corporations are doing is going outside of the country so they can pay people from Russia, Eastern Europe, lower wages than they can American high-tech people. I think that that's wrong. In terms of 2007 immigration reform, yeah, I did vote against it. I voted against it because the Southern Poverty Law Center, among other groups, said that the guest worker programs that were embedded in this agreement were akin to slavery. That bill was opposed by LULAC, the largest Latino organization in America. The Southern Poverty Law Center called its guest worker programs akin to slavery. We don't need slavery in America where guest workers are forced to stay with their employers. I wonder.
So that has been Bernie Sanders' position for a long, long time. And it's just baffling to me that people are surprised, or people just notice it now when he says it on Tim Dillon's podcast, but he's been saying it for years, including in those debates. So that's not a new thing. So you can't move on with this particular situation. People are not moving towards the next episode because they never saw the reruns. So I'm just baffled. I'm baffled that people never saw. They didn't know that. He said it on the debate stage multiple times. He said it in interviews multiple times. And now all of a sudden people are like, oh my God, Bernie Sanders says that Trump was right on immigration and that Biden was wrong and the Democrats didn't do enough. But that has been his position. And honestly, and like I'm telling you guys, if you look through the history, look up the history of socialism, and you'll see that oftentimes was the same position that renowned socialist scholars had as well. So there's an education piece that has been missing here. And again, you don't have to agree with it, but something was missed. Something was really missing here. And then I want you to think back to in 2016, some of the people that voted for Bernie in that primary against him and Hillary Clinton, and then turned around and voted for Donald Trump. Remember, they both had a populist agenda and similar positions on immigration. Now, of course, Bernie doesn't agree with the ICE raids like that. No, he's against that. But Bernie Sanders does not believe in open borders. And as you've seen from the video footage that I showed you, for the longest time, he never did. So it seems like there's a piece of education that was missing there. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Hey. Colin Larry says, I want my $27 back. I'll send to Palestine. Oh, I guess you mean you donated 27 to Bernie. I was about to say, did you give me 27 bucks? Vance says, I'm Vance Bostic. I'm running to primary Hakeem Jeffries for New York 8 in June 2026. This is a rebellion against corporate interests. I'm running against the machine, against every establishment puppet. Oh, that's interesting. And that's funny. We haven't gotten to the Hakeem story yet, but that has been my prediction, that Hakeem does not want to be challenged. Interesting. Karen says, Bernie also said that the Koch brothers wanted open borders to bring in cheap labor. Yep, there you go. Exactly. Thank you, Kinman. But if workers get better rights and better wages, won't they just lose their jobs all over again through AI? And that's a good point there, Kinman. And that's one of the reasons why we say what? You still have to go after the people at the top. Because as you see right now, Amazon already announced they're going to get rid of 600,000 people and replace them with robots. So even if you have this massive wave of deportations in the United States, these CEOs are not stupid. They're very clever. They will try to find another way to make more money and cut costs. Kimman, you've been on it. Welch's Grape says, next episode by Dr. Dre. Hey. Nate Dogg was on that too. Machu says, we gonna be the woman who lived in a shoebox apartment. New York Varsity says, people would work those jobs if they freaking paid them. They are profiting. They have the money. Take care of your people. That's right. That's right. Shout out to Adil Hamid, who became a Sabby member. Let's give Adil a big whoop, whoop. Hey. Thank you, Connie. Bernie is for the oligarchy to stop progressives. And thank you, Todd. That has been the standard left position since I was a kid. Is this a Bernstein Bears thing happening right now? On a long country road, deep in bear country. Yeah, I don't know. Somehow this was something that was missed. Let's get the comment there on Rockfin and we'll keep it moving. Hey. Thank you for the tip, Roger. Coretta Scott King letter to Senator Orrin Hatch on repealing penalties on employers hiring the undocumented. We are concerned, Senator Hatch, that your proposed remedy will cause another problem. The revival of a pre-1986 discrimination against Black and Brown U.S. and documented workers in favor of cheap labor, the undocumented workers. This would undoubtedly exacerbate an already severe economic crisis in communities where there are large numbers of new immigrants. Moreover, the repeal of employer sanctions will inevitably add to our social problems and place an unfair burden on the poor. Employer sanctions are a necessary means of stopping the exploitation of vulnerable workers and the undercutting of American jobs and living standards. Wow. So that is from Coretta Scott King. That's interesting. Interesting. We are moving on to the next story, ladies and gents. If you haven't done so, please smash that like button. If you're new, make sure you like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. And we are moving on to the next story here, folks. Speaking of the next episode, we're probably seeing a new episode here of what is happening with Latino voters and Donald Trump. I want to take you back. Let's look at the rerun of the exit polls in 2024. Just a little bit of a reminder here, folks. You know, the Latino community came out in support of Donald Trump pretty heavily when compared to before, right? 46% supported Donald Trump. Just want everybody to see that again, because now we are starting to see a little bit difference. Now, I want to see another poll too, because the other things that did change was Black men, like 21% of Black men came out to support Donald Trump, which was obviously more than he had the first time around. There was a big shift there as well. I haven't seen a new poll about that, but we do have new numbers about what is happening with the Latino community. Donald Trump appears to be losing support. We are moving on to the next episode, and you guys are about to see what is really happening. Donald Trump was able to win by getting that support. Things are starting to change now.
And President Trump's favorability has dropped among Hispanic adults since he took office in January. That's according to a new AP North poll. But it's causing some concern among his supporters, considering Hispanic voters played a major role in helping Trump win the 2024 election. Here to help me break down the results of this poll and dig into it a little bit more, our Scripps News Political Director, Andrew Rafferty. So, Raf, what did you take from this poll?
Yeah, well, Steph, it's October, so for many Americans, there's a chill in the air, perhaps thinking towards the World Series beginning tonight. For us, we are thinking towards elections. No huge ones, at least not nationally this time around compared to where we were this time last year. But this poll that you mentioned is really interesting because you really can't talk about American elections, who's going to win and lose, without talking about the importance of the Hispanic vote. And that's really what the AP is digging into. The fascinating findings out just this morning. Look at how Trump's favorability among Hispanics has grown. First, let's talk about how he was able to sort of bolster those numbers. You look at between the 2020 election to 2024, his numbers have improved about 8 percentage points. And while that's still not a majority, Kamala Harris did win a majority of Hispanics, it is certainly notable when you're talking about those close margins that we see in those battleground states. But look at what has happened over the course of 2025. This was taken before Trump got into office back in January. He still had favorable ratings, about 44% among Hispanics. Now, as we sit here today, that is just about a quarter. So a pretty precipitous drop, and one that really threatens to jeopardize all the sort of progress we have seen.
Let me go back just a little bit more here so we can just hone in on these numbers. In January this year, Donald Trump had 44% support from the Latino community. Now it shows 25%. What happened between January and now? The ICE raids. The ICE raids, we can add the economy to that too, because everybody, that's going to affect everyone. But the ICE raids, the way that he went about doing it, it's bad when it gets to the point where even Marjorie Taylor Greene called it out. Tim Dillon called it out. Theo Vaughn called it out. Joe Rogan called it out. These are all people who voted for Donald Trump and supported Donald Trump. So now you're starting to see Latino community, that support that Donald Trump gained with them has decreased. There was supposed to be, it was showing there was a possibility of some type of realignment with the Republican Party. That is already changing, and Trump hasn't even finished his first year yet. So they're seeing what is happening. Again, I'm just going to say this for the 100th time. I could have sworn this is what he said he was going to do. Now, some people probably are like, well, he didn't mean it like that or say it like that, or he was just talking. And I was like, I could have sworn he said this is what he was going to do. But if I'm wrong, let me know. But this is where he's at now. So regardless if he tries to run for a third term or not, whoever ends up running as the Republican nominee in 2028 is going to have to reckon with this. Let's continue on.
The sort of progress we have seen among not just Donald Trump, but Republicans overall when it comes to reaching out to the Hispanic vote. We talked about going back to the 2020 election, 2016, how much of a sort of reliable voting base Hispanics had been for Democrats. That has really started to crack, started to change, really driven by young Hispanics, specifically young men. Even in this poll, we've seen some fraying of that support for Republicans overall, and then, of course, specifically for Donald Trump. And I think, anyone who's been paying attention to the headlines recently might point to ICE raids, some of the immigration actions we've seen from Donald Trump, but you can't just ascribe that to this fraying of support. We were at those conventions in Milwaukee last summer where they were talking about mass deportations. This has been something that Donald Trump has been talking about even when he was much more popular. It really does come down to some of those economic concerns that we've seen not just from Hispanics, but across the board, all races, all genders, that the economy just is not getting better, despite what the president had talked about on the campaign trail a year ago. And so a lot of time, this is just one poll, so we don't read into it too much, but certainly a warning sign for Republicans who were feeling pretty confident about some of the gains they had seen in the 2024 election among Hispanic voters.
The fact that it has decreased that by that much, and the year hasn't even ended yet, that is a sign. That is a sign. What did I mean by a third term? Oh, because he said that he would like to run for a third term. That's what he said. Like, obviously, that's not legally, that's not possible, but that wouldn't stop him. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But he said he wanted to run for a third term. Steve Bannon even came out and said that he thinks that Donald Trump could absolutely end up running for a third term. So we don't know what's going to happen. But the reality is this whole realignment thing, we see there is another shift that's happening because obviously they're not agreeing with what's happening with the way these deportations are being handled. Let's continue on.
Well, certainly, while we know the president campaigned on this mass deportation promise, I think it's probably safe to say seeing that implemented is maybe a little different than a lot of Americans were expecting. And then on the economy, the president made a lot of big promises about fixing the economy right away, and he hasn't been able to do that as quickly as he thought. So certainly could be contributing not only to Hispanic support, but other support for the president. But I want to ask about a few elections we do have coming up, but we might not have any nationwide federal elections. There are some.
So that's important for people to pay attention to, that he is already seeing that decrease there with Hispanic voters. So I think that's important for people to see. And you are going to get the opportunity here to hear from some of those who did support Donald Trump, a part of that community. And I want you to hear what they are saying now. This was just 3 months ago. Listen to this.
A wave of disappointment. One of President Donald Trump's most loyal voting blocs, Cuban and Venezuelan immigrants. Now speaking out in Miami, a Republican stronghold, as the recent wave of deportations hits home and the Trump administration moved to end temporary legal status, or TPS, for more than 500,000 people who arrived during the Biden administration. Elena Conde says she came here from Cuba on humanitarian parole in 2023. Her husband, Ariel Lara, crossed the border with Mexico twice, once in 2019 when he was detained and deported, and then again in 2022. 6 weeks ago, he was taken into custody at his residency hearing.
So he was given an appointment to go to ICE. You told him before he left for that appointment, you don't have anything to worry about. You haven't done anything.
Instead, he was transferred to Texas, where we spoke to him from his detention center.
Ariel, ¿qué piensas sobre lo que está pasando ahora en este país, en este momento con respecto a las deportaciones? How do you feel about everything that's happening right now in this country with the deportations? You don't understand how this could happen. ¿Qué pensaba que iba a pasar cuando ganó Trump? What did you think was going to happen when Trump won? You're saying you believed the president when he said he was going to deport criminals.
Now, Elena is left behind with her daughter, 7-month-old son, and Ariel's 70-year-old grandmother, who has been a...
We have to pause here for just a second because, again, as someone who covered those elections last year, he didn't just say he was going to deport criminals. Like, correct me if you guys remember this or not, but I remember he was saying then, coming after the Dreamers. He was like, well, we're going to go after them too, that if you weren't... if your parents came here illegally, but you were born here, we're going to try to change the citizenship status to where you don't automatically get that citizenship just because you were born here. I mean, am I losing my mind? Like, did he not say these things? Did he not say these things and make this very clear? So I just don't understand, again, why people are so surprised that this is what he has done. And this is, as they said, that is a Republican stronghold. Now, I don't consider Florida to be a swing state. I consider it to be a conservative, red state. It hasn't swung, if I remember correctly, since Obama 08. Obama was able to win Florida in 2008. FM said that's exactly what Trump said. I thought so. Yeah, I thought that was exactly what he said. But a Democrat, from what I remember, for the presidential election hasn't been able to win it since 08, Obama. So I don't know. But the people that she is talking to, these were Trump supporters. It's not like they voted for Kamala or they voted third party. No, these are people who supported Donald Trump. And it's almost as if they didn't hear what he was saying. Like they didn't hear the same thing that you and I heard. I don't know. Let's go back just a little bit here because I cut her off. Sorry.
And Ariel's 70-year-old grandmother, who has been a U.S. citizen for years. Together, facing a reality they never imagined.
Toda mi familia votó por Trump. Your whole family voted for Trump. Lo apoyaba a Trump durante su campaña. Did you support him? Yo estoy fuera. You're outside of it. You can't vote. Pero te sientes decepcionada. Do you feel disappointed, deceived, engañada? Me siento mal porque sé que ellos creían en él. You feel bad because you knew the rest of them believed in him.
It's a concern Democratic strategists are capitalizing on, with billboards like these calling Republican lawmakers traitors. Still, here in Florida, Trump won almost 70% of the Cuban American vote in 2024, along with 61% of Doral.
See this? So again, I mean, I don't know what to say. And, you know, some people will point to me and they'll say, well, Sabs, we didn't believe that Trump was actually going to do those things he said he was going to do. Really? Did you miss his first term? Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm living in a cartoon. Oh, my God.
To the largest Venezuelan American population in the U.S.
They used us.
Adelis Ferro is the co-founder and executive director of the Venezuelan American Caucus.
How is the Venezuelan community feeling right now, especially in the context of these deportations?
Desperate, terrified. There are people with mental health issues. There are people with panic attacks, anxiety attacks. They rather to die than go back to Venezuela, and then
people
have
are
to
talking
stop.
about taking their
I
lives.
have those messages
Because the situation here
because of the situation. They rather
so
to
bad with
take their own
deportation.
lives, yes, than go back to Venezuela.
The ripple effects affecting families and businesses. This Venezuelan business owner, who asked us not to use his name to protect his business and fellow owners, said the political instability has led to a 20% drop in revenue.
It's affected your clients as well as the people who work here. A lot of people have already invested in businesses here and they've stopped because they just don't know what the future brings.
Still, experts say the current turmoil may not hurt the Republican Party.
All this stuff done in the first 200 days of the administration. They have a long road ahead before the midterms.
Do you think that Trump will pay a political price?
I'm not sure that Trump or the Republican Party as an institution is going to suffer a great deal unless the Democrats can muster an opposition that is a compelling vision as to how things could be done differently.
Morgan Radford, NBC News.
So I just got to say, folks, I can understand if he didn't run that way on that issue. I could totally understand it, but he did. So to me, it's just, you know, like you could have voted for someone else. Adrian said here, no, they didn't use you. You let yourself be used. Exactly. Like when I saw this video for the first time and that woman said that, she was like, he used us. Nah, he told you. Like blatantly so. More so than other politicians too, because Donald Trump has no filter. Like he literally came flat out and said what his plan was and what he wanted to do. I don't understand. Like, I really don't get it. It's like people hear what they want to hear and people believe what they want to believe. But this is really interesting. This next episode of the Republican Party, that realignment that happened for 2024, I'm wondering if the next episode is going to show the same thing. I'm wondering if that realignment is going to hold. Probably not. And listen, you know, I have a lot of sympathy for people. At the same time, you know, I mean, it's not like this was a secret. It's not like he said, hey, I'm going to create a pathway to citizenship and then did this. He told you what he was going to do. So there you have it. There you have it. Let's go to the comments, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Potato. AI needs to be made illegal or harshly taxed, and that money should go towards UBI for displaced workers. Yeah, this is a big concern of mine. We already talked about what Amazon is doing. what Facebook is about to do, and also Goldman Sachs also implementing AI and replacing workers. This is a big one. You know, like I said before, I didn't agree with Andrew Yang on a lot of his other politics, but he was correct about automation. He was right about that. Shout out to Kathleen Malone for becoming a Sabby member. Give Kathleen a big whoop, whoop. Yeah. Wu said it. Latinos did that because they didn't want a woman president, especially one that was considered black. Ooh. Uh-oh, Wu, you said it. Shout out to Where is the Love? Cubans had caste and colorism class too. Quoting the comedian Paul Mooney, they have the complexion of the protection of the collection, or they thought they had that protection. Paul Mooney is a trip. That was deep, 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 deep. Let's get the comment on Rockfin. All right. Thank you for the tip, Roger. If you came here illegally, you cannot expect sympathy when they run you out of here. If you overstay your visa and them boys come and get you, then you cannot expect sympathy when they do. You knew when your visa was about to expire, you should have done something about it. If you couldn't for whatever reason, then that's on you. It's time to go back. No one cried when the deporter-in-chief did it. Interesting. Roger letting us know exactly how he feels. Can we go to part 2, Eric? We're going to go to the next story. Hey. This next story, we talk about the next episode. There is this little plot that's happening where I believe people like Matt Walsh and others are trying to get you to take your focus off of Israel and what Israel is doing, because they're still killing people in Gaza, by the way. And they're trying to make it so that you fear Muslim Americans. Now, we're going to get into this story here that happened with Mehdi Hassan, but it's not just about Mehdi Hassan. I have seen it nonstop the past week, all on Twitter. They have been coming after Mehdi. They've been coming after Zohran. They have been coming after basically Muslim public figures, attacking them and pointing their fingers, even going as far as to saying, oh, you're going to do the next 9/11. It is so much blatant Islamophobia right now coming from these accounts like Matt Walsh and the like of, and they're getting a lot of retweets. And I am here to tell you, do not fall for this propaganda, because I really believe they are trying to get the American people to fear Muslim people so that you are no longer focusing on what Israel is doing. They are really trying to make the case that these are the people that you should fear the most when Israel has committed a whole damn genocide. Now you can see it starts here. Let's go ahead and bring this up here. Thank you. Here's Matt Walsh. Islamophobia is the fakest, dumbest concept I've ever heard of. Somehow even more BS than transphobia, which I didn't think was possible. These people flock here by the millions while simultaneously claiming that our country is mean and terrible to them. Okay, if it's so bad, then leave. Now, first, let's push back on something here. Basically, what Matt Walsh is saying is, if you come here, you have no right to complain. There have been a number of racist and Islamophobic comments towards Zohran, towards Mehdi as well, because he personally went after Mehdi head to head, as you will see. So you're just supposed to pretend like those things are not happening. You're just supposed to put your head down and do a good job, right? So this panel here, it's a CNN. I think this is the one. Oh, no, this is the Zohran thing. Zohran came forward and he is talking about the Islamophobia surrounding him. And I've seen them all. I've seen them on social media. It also came from Andrew Cuomo. Even Eric Adams got in on it. They're all on it. Listen to this.
I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt. Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab. I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City.
Those things did happen right? Those things did happen. Because you know what? Some of us remember 9/11. I remember 9/11, and I remember afterwards, yes, there was rampant Islamophobia in this country. Yes, there were people getting attacked and they were getting beat up because they were wearing a hijab. Yes, those things did happen. And now all of a sudden, because he's getting close and it looks like he's going to win, because he's getting close, early voting has already started. Now they're ramping up the Islamophobia once again. Now I want to show you something. Shout out to Unity Africa. If you don't want them, maybe you shouldn't be occupying their lands and committing acts of terrorism there, as well as arming and funding that evil terrorist state that bombs their countries daily. This is the U.S. military presence in the Middle East. This is disgusting. Turkey, Syria, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, UAE. You see this? Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. This is what's happening in those countries. Okay? Our military is that involved in those countries. Our military has overthrown leaders in those countries. But Matt Walsh isn't going to tell you that. Matt Walsh isn't going to say, hey, U.S. military, stay out of those countries. He's not going to tell you that. Matt Walsh and others are trying to bring back up identity. The same people who say don't talk about identity politics, always talking about identity politics. They're trying to bring up identity, and they're trying to purposefully attack Muslim Americans right now because Zohran is on a path to win. And they don't want that to happen. Then on top of that, you have Mehdi Hassan. I'll get into the attacks that he did towards Mehdi Hassan as well. But all of this is to take your attention off of Israel, to get Americans to stop pointing their finger at Israel and blaming Israel and despising Israel, to get you to go back to the days of 9/11 and start pointing your finger at Muslim Americans again. That's what this is about. They're always trying to redirect your attention. You'll see it here in the case of Mehdi. Matt Walsh goes, the answer is me. I'm more American. You aren't American at all. And nobody here likes you or wants you here. So here we go again. Right? So Mehdi's response here was, he was responding to Mehdi's tweet. Who is more American, the guy who supports free and fair elections, me, or the guy who got mad when judges locked up violent insurrectionists, Matt Walsh? The guy who supports the First Amendment, me, or the guy who wants to imprison people for their speech, Matt Walsh? So you see this guy, this Matt Walsh, he's a distraction. And let me tell you why. Because you know what you notice? You know what I noticed about him? You don't never see him go after power. He goes after people and goes after things that he knows could be a big distraction, but ultimately don't impact your lives in the way that you think they do because they're not in positions of power. He is there to keep the status quo. So as long as he can get you to hate Muslim Americans, as long as he got you out there saying, what is a woman, and got you focused on that, you're not focusing on who's at the top. It's a distraction. So let's see what Mehdi said here. Because he came after Mehdi, started attacking him, and I'm trying to tell you right now, on social media, on Twitter, they have changed the algorithm again. And a lot of these accounts that are attacking Muslim Americans, they are being amplified by the algorithm. So listen to what Mehdi said, and then I'm going to show you what they're trying to do to Zohran as well right now. We live in a crazy world.
We need to talk about Matt Walsh. And if you're asking Matt who, then I'm truly envious of you. Normally, I wouldn't waste time responding to basically an internet troll, but Matt is so emblematic of everything that is wrong with the modern MAGA right. Faux outrage, self-victimization, verbal abuse, a walking, talking Dunning-Kruger. Now, Matt Walsh, who says he's a conservative Christian, is upset with me for being a Muslim and for being an immigrant. but above all else, for being an American. That he cannot stand. So he did an entire 13-minute video calling me a spiteful, lying, self-entitled brat, on top of his tweet in which he called me an ungrateful little bitch, just as Jesus would have said. Now, before we get into the substance of Matt's claims, if we can even call it that, before we get into what I said about Muslims and the founding of America, a little bit of background on who Matt Walsh is. Shock jock podcaster, former radio DJ, and now basically that Daily Wire guy who isn't Ben Shapiro. He's also the guy who hasn't got the greatest of political judgment. He went all in on Ron DeSantis in the GOP primary and then had to come crawling back to Trump when DeSantis got destroyed, as some of us predicted he would. Matt is also the guy who said COVID wasn't a big deal, that, quote, it's totally irrational to panic over this virus. He later admitted he got it wrong. But here's my favorite. Matt was so bothered by a black woman playing Ariel in the Little Mermaid movie that he actually said this.
From a scientific perspective, okay, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have someone with darker skin who lives deep in the ocean.
These are the things that he gets you to focus on. He gets you to focus on these things that don't matter in your freaking life. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who a damn mermaid is. These are the things. Matt Walsh has been doing this for years, and a lot of people fall for it. Meanwhile, you can't put groceries on the table. You don't know if you can pay your light bill. You got laid off and you still looking for a job. He talks about things that don't directly impact your lives. It's a distraction.
Words to describe how dumb you have to be to try and make scientific arguments about the skin color of mermaids, which are fictional fucking characters, Matt. This is the guy who millions on the right turn to for intellectual guidance, historical analysis, and thought leadership. Then you wonder why this country is so screwed right now. By the way, just quickly, consistency isn't really his thing either. In May of this year, he said identifying as a girl dad is super cringe and corny. In 2020, though, he said being a girl dad is a great blessing. He constantly complains about political violence and death threats when they're aimed at him, but he's happy to dish it out to the people he doesn't like. He's called for the mayor of Chicago, a black man, to be executed. He's called for Jimmy Kimmel, a comedian, to be arrested. He once said this, too.
But it is, in fact, true that you have to make people hurt. And I'm sorry, but holding signs and yelling loudly will not make anyone hurt.
You have to make people hurt. Now, what's really bothering him about me is that I said in a recent visit to Dearborn,
I think that if you can play church bells, you can pray the call to prayer.
Isn't it okay for Muslim Americans to broadcast a call to prayer? I mean, let me add right now, within reason, of course, and in accordance with all local sound and noise ordinances. But Matt went nuts and said Christianity built this country. Islam did not at all in even the slightest way. That's why we can have our church bells. To which I responded, 1 in 3 of the slaves who built this country were Muslims. They were here long before the Walsh family arrived. You'd know that if you'd studied history, but I know MAGA has an issue with studying.
This is actually true. I looked this up myself just to double check. But yeah, 1 in 3 slaves who built the country were Muslims. That is true. So again, Matt Walsh just says things and just people just believe it because, like I said, Elon Musk, he has changed the algorithm to amplify the right-wing accounts.
To which Matt responded with a 13-minute video in which he got really mad, but was unable to rebut the 2 central points that I made. Number 1, enslaved people helped build this country. And number 2, perhaps up to 1 in 3 of those slaves were Muslims. Matt can't rebut that because it's true, according to historians, according to the African American History Museum, according to the US State Department. Muslim slaves are a historical fact. As his boss Ben Shapiro has famously declaimed, facts don't care about your feelings, Matt. It's not my fault if they didn't teach you about slavery in high school. In his video, Matt Walsh sounds like a Monty Python sketch. What did the slaves ever do for us? Ignoring the railways, the roads, the ports, the literal seat of our government, the White House and the Capitol, all built by enslaved people. And 1 in 3 of them, remember, being Muslims, black African Muslims. Matt is also just completely clueless about the Muslims who fought in the Revolutionary War, in the War of 1812, in the Civil War, where most of them fought in the Union Army. But then again, Matt's been pictured wearing a Confederate t-shirt, so maybe he's mad that the Muslims fought against the Confederacy. He even issues this challenge to me.
If Islam had ceased to exist 300 years ago, this country would not have lost a single thing. There is not a single good thing about our country that we would not have if not for Islam.
Again, he just says things.
And if you doubt that, then go ahead and give me an example of the great gift that Islam has given to this country since its founding.
Has he never heard of the golden age of Islam, which helped fuel the Renaissance and the Enlightenment in Europe, which of course then helped produce the American founding fathers? Has he ever gotten off of the internet and read a book? But look, I'm happy to fill the gaps in his education. He asked me to explain what Islam or Muslims have done for America. I mean, the black Muslim slaves aside, more recently, how about the planning of the moon landings? That was a Muslim American scientist and immigrant. How about the science behind modern skyscrapers? That was a Muslim American engineer and immigrant. How about brain tumor treatment? That was a Muslim American neurosurgeon and immigrant. Just this year, the Nobel Prize for Chemistry went to, among others, a Palestinian American Muslim immigrant whose research Matt could never possibly understand and whose work could help tackle man-made climate change, which Matt doesn't believe in. Because Matt Walsh's knowledge of science is right up there with his knowledge of history.
And we can go on and go on and go on all day. But the reality here is this, right? That's one thing, this battle between him back and forth with him and Mehdi Hassan. And look, Mehdi Hassan and I don't agree on everything either. I didn't like the way that Mehdi Hassan spoke to Jill Stein. We had disagreements back then online. I didn't agree with him on that. That being said, I am noticing this trend over the past week of these accounts like Matt Walsh coming after Muslim Americans saying, oh gosh, we need to get them all out of here. Trying to get you to be fearful of them so you can take your focus off of Israel. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, considering now that Charlie Kirk is no longer alive, I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't some type of plan with Turning Point USA. We got to get the American people to fear Muslims again, and that'll take their attention off of Israel. I wouldn't be surprised. And also, if Zohran Mandami wasn't in this race, probably wouldn't even be hearing about this at this point in time. Look at what he says here. Matt Walsh, Muslim Americans have been treated far better here and have been far more welcome than any white American Christian would be in a Muslim country. Once again, that is incorrect, right? There wasn't any sort of campaign or persecution and oppression against Muslims after September 11. That is false. In fact, the government went absurdly out of its way to avoid even the impression of such a thing. To this day, they make sure to screen elderly white disabled grannies at TSA just as much as they screen military-age Arab males named Muhammad, even though 0% of the global terror threat comes from the former and 100% comes from the latter. That is false. The terror threat comes from Israel. I think we all have seen that. We know what's really happening here. But Matt has to push this propaganda, because if he can convince you that it's the Muslim people that you need to be afraid of, well, then you may not be paying as much attention to Israel and what Israel is doing anymore. Goes over here and says, this country is bent over backwards for the Zohran Mandamis of the world. And for all that effort, we don't even get even so much as a thank you in return. Thank you for what? So he's mad because Zohran finally said something. Put this here. Finally spoke out here about the treatment that he's been getting. We'll come to that in just a second. Even now, as you see, House Republicans are now pushing to denaturalize Zohran Mandami and possibly deport him because of issues with his censorship form, per New York Post. Eric Daughtry, who is another one of those right-wing accounts that is amplified on X, said, do it back to Uganda. So this is what I've been talking about, folks. I've seen it all week. They're trying to, now they want to, let's denaturalize Zohran Mandami so he won't be mayor. This is how far they're willing to go. And here's the thing. I'm not even like a Zohran fan or stan. I think Andrew Cuomo is horrible. If there were third party, I would probably urge people, oh, vote for the left third party candidate, but there isn't one. I think Andrew Cuomo is absolutely horrible. And part of the reason why there isn't a third party candidate is because of Andrew Cuomo, because he changed the rules to make it more difficult for them to get on the ballot. But nobody should be okay with this. Nobody should be okay with what they are doing and how they're trying to fearmonger. We go on here, and I gave the warning to people here. The CNN panel comes in. They're smearing Zohran to turn your attention away from Israel and to get you to fear Muslims again. Scott Jennings and the right-wing accounts on X are elevated to spread that message. Don't fall for it. Listen to what Scott Jennings says.
I want to speak to the memory of my aunt, who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
Today he has this press conference. I watched a chunk of it. I didn't hear any words for the victims of 9/11, but he found the real victim, his aunt.
Is he?
You know, I mean, the victims of 9/11 were in the Twin Towers. Those were the victims.
Is the implication here?
So does Scott Jennings not realize that some of the victims of 9/11 were also Muslim? You see where the thinking goes? You see the propaganda that's being spilled here on CNN? Let's continue.
That he has to answer for the terrorists who attacked 9/11?
No, I think if you're going to have if you're going to run for mayor of New York City, or have any position in New York City, and you're going to talk about 9/11 or invoke 9/11, you darn sure better start with the people who died in the Twin Towers. That's what I think. And he didn't do that. And he kind of, you know, he made it about his experience and his aunt and all this. My advice would be, if you're going to want to be the mayor of this town, and by the way, he's probably going to win. That moment in our history, you cannot lose sight of what happened. People died in those Twin Towers. They did not deserve to die. We did suffer a terrorist attack, and we can't really forget the moment, making it about him and his family. Okay, there were almost 3,000 people that died there. It's a big deal. It is true.
But let me say something here. You know what else we can't forget about? We can't forget about the videos of the dancing Israelis after that 9/11 attack either. But Scott don't want to mention that because he's an Israel stooge. He's not going to mention that. We can't forget about that video. And the way that he says this is almost as though there were no Muslim Americans that were also killed during those attacks. Also, if we really want to go there, notice how the U.S. has no problem having this allyship with Saudi Arabia. Who flew the planes? So see, Scott, people like Scott, you're not serious. Scott Jennings ain't serious. He's basically on CNN to offer, I guess, like this right-wing perspective to try to get CNN's ratings back up because they fell in the toilet prior to the presidential election and even more after the presidential election. That's basically why he's there. He's a big propagandist. He said some very, very Islamophobic things on that show. And the fact that he's still allowed to be able to come back on there, think about this for a second. If it were the other way around and he would have said something negative about Israel, he would have been called anti-Semitic. He would have never been allowed back on CNN again. But he can get on CNN and he can say all these Islamophobic things and he still comes back on as a regular. And by the way, these people are friends. Abby Phillips and Scott Jennings are friends. They're not just people that sit at the table and just argue back and forth. There are pictures and videos of them hanging out when they are not at the studio. I don't have friends like that. So this is where we're at now, folks. Getting back to the Islamophobia. He knew exactly what he was doing with this remark. Scott knew exactly what he was doing.
Mamdani, he has allied himself with certain people, a lot of the people that surround him, the people involved in this democratic socialist organization. I mean, they have said more than a handful of eyebrow-raising things when it comes to their views of America, their views of Jewish people, and so on and so forth. He knows that. He does align himself with them. He doesn't really distance himself.
So do you see this? Once again, the victim has to be a Jewish American. That has to be the victim that you give the most attention to. But you can sit right there and say whatever you want to say about Muslim Americans and you get a pass. And for him to sit right there next to a black woman making these comments, and the fact that he is still allowed to come back on that show, but you won't allow the pro-Palestine people to come on the show, and that's your friend. Zohran finally did give a response to what was happening. We're going to play a little bit of this here.
And over these last few days, These are the lessons that have become the closing message of Andrew Cuomo, Curtis Sliwa, and Eric Adams. Yesterday, Andrew Cuomo laughed and agreed when a radio show host said that I would cheer another 9/11. Yesterday, Eric Adams said that we can't let our city become Europe. He compared me to violent extremists, and he lied when he said that our movement seeks to burn churches and destroy communities. The day before that, Curtis Sliwa slandered me from a debate stage when he claimed that I supported global jihad. And every day, super PAC ads imply that I'm a terrorist or mock the way I eat, push polls that ask New Yorkers questions like whether they support invented proposals to make halal mandatory, or political cartoons that represent my candidacy as an airplane hurtling towards the World Trade Center. But I do not want to use this moment to speak to them any further. I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of the city. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt, who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab. I want to speak to the Muslim city worker, whether they teach in our schools or walk the beat for the NYPD. New Yorkers who all make daily sacrifices on behalf of this city only to see their leaders spit in their face. I want to speak to every child who grows up in New York marked as the other, who is randomly selected in a way that rarely feels random, who feels that they carry a stain that can never quite be cleaned. Growing up in the shadow of 9/11, I have known what it means to live with an undercurrent of suspicion. I will always remember the disdain I faced, the way my name could immediately become Muhammad, and how I could return to my city only to be asked in a double-mirrored room at the airport if I had any plan of attacking it. And since I was very young, I have known that I was spared the worst of it. I was never pressured to be an informant like a classmate of mine. I have never had the word terrorist spray painted on my garage as one of my staff had to endure. My mosque has never been set on fire. To be Muslim in New York is to expect indignity. But indignity does not make us distinct. There are many New Yorkers who face it. It is the tolerance of that indignity that does.
What I want to add here, and then we'll get to the other part as well, is this. Those things, I remember after 9/11, I can tell you guys, those things really did happen. I remember it very clearly. I know one person in particular who changed their name so that people, okay, maybe they won't attack me if they don't hear my name. And you have people like Matt Walsh, Scott Jennings, and other conservative pundits and Democrats too, because Andrew Cuomo did it too. And so did Eric Adams, trying to take you back there. Anything to protect and maintain the status quo. And I'm here to tell you guys, don't fall for it. Because we have seen multiple episodes in a row of Israel's genocide and people calling out Israel and the world turning against Israel. But now we are going to the next episode. Now we're going to the episode where they are really trying to bring in a new story. And this story changes it and it makes the villain Muslim Americans. That's what they are trying to do. And if they can continue, the media, all of them, Fox News, CNN, all of them, if they can convince you that you should be afraid of Muslim Americans again, then we would have lost the plot. And all the work that we have done over these years, protesting, speaking out against Israel, the flotillas, all of it would have been lost. So we cannot allow those episodes to become archives, to end up on a shelf, a dusty shelf in a basement that no one can get into unless they have a key. We can't allow ourselves to be tricked and fall into this. I don't care if you agree with Zohran's policies or not. It's one thing to say you disagree with the policies. It's another thing to go after the identity. This is the game that they're playing. Pay very close attention to it. They are really trying to take you back there, folks. They're really trying to take you back there. This person sums it up so well. Listen to this audio here.
Zionists push Islamophobia because it's easier than getting people to like Israel. Have you ever noticed how whenever you see someone promoting hatred toward Muslims, 9 times out of 10 it'll be someone who supports Israel? There's a reason for that. Zionists promote Islamophobia because convincing Westerners to hate Muslims is easier than convincing them to love Israel. Support for Israel is a hard sell. On paper, it's just a shitty, evil country full of shitty, evil people and has no redeeming qualities as a state. Nobody can explain how it's an important ally in a way that makes sense. All the problems they claim it helps solve are problems Israel itself creates with the help of Western backing. Unless you're a devout Jewish Zionist or Christian Zionist, there's nothing about the modern state of Israel you'd naturally be inclined to support.
That's right. So what they are doing is that they can increase support for Israel by just convincing everybody to turn away and run away from Muslims again. But we're not going to fall for it over here. We're not falling for it. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents, and then we'll move on to the next story. Vance said they are coming for him hard. He will be the next mayor of New York City, though. Yeah, they are coming from him. Thank you, New York Varsity. Watching our Muslim brothers and sisters in New York City waive their 5th and 6th Amendment rights to show how much they loved America. Walsh is pathetic. Veruca, excuse me. I'd rather have a Mehdi than a Matt as a neighbor any day. Yes. FM Sabby, can you do a deep dive into 1 in 3 American slaves were Muslims? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Thank you, William. Fake moon landing, bad example. LOL, Walsh, hypocrisy. Thank you, Blueser. It's bread and circuses. All the while, there's private investments going into the military, even paying the soldiers. The move for war becomes clearer by the day. Walsh knows the role he's playing. There you go. Thank you, Susanna. Elon has definitely been spoken to. Algorithms have been changed. They really have. If you guys are over on X, you'll see it, fam. You'll see it. Okay. We'll get back to the other super chats after the next story. I'm going to try to keep up with the time here. Eric, don't delete those there. I'll get to those next. Okay. Let's keep this show on the road. Let's keep things moving, guys. I'm trying to get better with my time. I really, really am. Okay. This story came through. Talk about the next episode. Hakeem Jeffries decided to endorse Zohran Mamdani. Now, this is after he said he wouldn't do it, couldn't do it, shouldn't do it, refused to do it. He did it. But why? And that's the question I think that people should be asking. Let's go ahead and get into it here, ladies and gentlemen. Believe it or not, he finally endorsed Zohran Mamdani at the last hour, right before early voting, of course.
About some breaking news that we're following right now involving the race for New York City mayor and an endorsement that is a long time in the coming. This coming from Hakeem Jeffries, House Minority Leader, finally backing Zohran Mamdani. As you can see in the New York Times, Hakeem Jeffries gives Mamdani a last-minute endorsement. You say breaking, the House Democratic leader endorsed Zohran Mamdani in the race for mayor. Jeffries emphasized that the party needed to unite in the face of existential threat from President Trump. And he is.
Pause right here. So this tells me that somebody told Hakeem he had to do this. I don't think Hakeem did this willingly. And you'll see that when you hear his response here to reporters. He's like, yeah, well, it's important that I unite so we can fight back against Donald Trump. He waited to endorse him right before early voting started. Like literally right before, right? So I am willing to bet that somebody, maybe higher up in Dem leadership, told Hakeem, look, you probably need to endorse Zohran Mamdani because Zohran won your district very handsomely. And you could face a challenge. And I think this is what this is really about. Like, I don't think that Hakeem is like, yeah, let's unite together and fight back against Trump. I think that's just a standard political speech for him to give, standard political talking point. I think that Hakeem doesn't want to lose his seat, and he's afraid that the same person he didn't want to endorse all this time, who heavily won his district, could be the reason why Hakeem Jeffries ends up with a challenger, and Hakeem Jeffries no longer has that damn seat. So this is what this is really about. He's looking forward to his political career. Let's continue on here.
Obviously, Mamdani, the front runner in this race. Andrew Cuomo, Curtis Sliwa also going to be on the ticket. Eric Adams, the incumbent, dropping out recently. But this is big news as Hakeem Jeffries, following suit with other lawmakers, including Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, backing Mamdani, the Democratic primary, a big win for him several months ago. New York Post saying the influential House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries finally endorsing Zohran Mamdani for New York City mayor after a lengthy wait as early voting begins in earnest on Saturday. So less than 2 weeks out from the ultimate population in New York City heading to the polls. So a big endorsement. It was a long time coming. Plenty of reporters pressing Jeffries on just when and if he would eventually endorse Mamdani, and that did come at really the final hour as people begin to cast their ballot for who
they want at the very final hour, right? So let's just fast forward here a little bit and let's get to robot Hakeem, because he really is like a robot.
Employees, while at the same time we need to decisively address the Republican healthcare crisis, is crushing people all across the country. Meanwhile, Donald Trump and Republicans on Capitol Hill are nowhere to be found, have zero interest in actually addressing this issue. That's a shame. Questions?
Leader Jeffries, the New York mayoral race early voting, as you know, starts tomorrow. Are you ready to endorse Mamdani yet?
Stay tuned.
Leader Jeffries. We are now at this point, day 24.
So do you see, he could have endorsed him right there, right? So he says, stay tuned. He could have announced it right there. We'll go to the other part of this conversation so you can see what else he said about that. He said, stay tuned. Oh, I think I need to continue on and fast forward. Sorry about that, you guys. Yeah, let's go forward a little bit more here because he gets into the government shutdowns. There we go.
The problem that the country confronts right now is that Donald Trump and Republicans decided to shut the government down. Like, what's unclear about the fact that Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And from the very beginning of this year, they've taken a my way or the highway approach, have steamrolled the country in all of the things, jamming their right-wing ideology down the throats of the American people. And now Republicans are claiming that they're helpless. The problem that we have right now is that House Republicans refuse to come back. They've literally been on vacation for 4 consecutive weeks. Donald Trump has found all of the time in the world to play golf. He can try to extort $230 million to line his pockets from the Department of Injustice. Somehow the Trump administration found $40 billion to bail out a right-wing wannabe dictator in Argentina, but can't find a dime to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits in order to make life and health care more affordable for hardworking American taxpayers.
But Hakeem already knows the game, right? Hakeem knows that it's not that he can't find the money. Hakeem knows that it's not that they can't find the money for any of us. The money is already there. They just choose to put that money more so into the defense, right? The defense budget. We're looking at over $800 billion for the defense budget. So it's not that you can't even find it. It's like he knows he knows the money is there, but they choose to use it in different ways. It's the same thing for you, Hakeem. Same thing for you, man. Who you still to this day don't really want to support Medicare for all. So, it's all these games that are played. We're going to fast forward a little bit here so we can get to the Zohran part. I think he says it right here. I'm so sorry he talks for so long, you guys. It's hard to listen to.
Healthcare crisis that they are inflicting on the American.
More do you need to hear at this point? How many more conversations do you need to have? Why are you refusing to endorse?
Same answer.
Why are you refusing to endorse?
I have not refused to endorse. I've refused to articulate my position, and I will momentarily at some point in advance of early voting.
Leader Jeffries. Thank you, Leader Jeffries. There are some
So, does that sound like someone who was enthusiastic to endorse? I'm not refusing to endorse. I have not articulated my position. What? Like, this doesn't make any sense, right? So he did that on purpose. He held out for as long as he could on purpose. Because yes, it would have given Zohran even more momentum if he would have done the endorsement early, but he did it that way to make it look like, okay, I'm kind of being forced into this. So again, I want to remind you, we just have to go back and look. Blue, no matter who, Jeffrey slammed for gutless refusal to endorse Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani won the House Minority Leaders District by double digits. Double digits in the primary. And if you follow the money, well, you can see why. This is who he stands firm with. This is who Hakeem Jeffries really is beholden to. The donor class. Look at how much money he has received from the pro-Israel lobby. And notice, this is not just AIPAC. AIPAC, DMFI, NORPAC. See, there's multiple different ones. So this is the problem. So now that brings up this question here. Now that he has given that endorsement to Zohran Mamdani, does that mean that AIPAC is going to pull out of funding for Hakeem? Maybe. Does it mean that AIPAC may try to put someone up to challenge against him? Maybe. I don't know. But the way that he announced it almost kind of seemed like he was forced into doing it. So he still want to kind of be on the good side of AIPAC too, because he don't want them to put someone to primary up against him like they did to Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. Because for all that talk about hip hop day that you did, Hakeem Jeffries with Jamal Bowman and all this, yeah, we need a hip hop day and all that. You might be hippity hip hopping right back to New York. So he was just looking out for his political career. And even now, he's doing this endorsement. He's like, oh, I better try to, I got to come out and say something because, you know, somebody else to my left may come and primary me. I'd say that's probably going to happen any damn way. Because Hakeem Jeffries has just been a tool. Again, you guys could have had someone so much better. His name is Charles Barron. He's a Black Panther. He was winning in the polls. He was beating Hakeem Jeffries. Democrats and the donor class did their little sneaky trickaroo. The pro-Israel lobby was able to get David Duke to put out a smear tactic against Charles Barron. And just like that, Hakeem Jeffries shot up in the polls, and that's how he got that seat. Now, you can even see here, if we go back, when he talked about the concerns that he had with Zohran, listen to what the concerns were.
In terms of the mayor's race in advance of early voting.
So I did watch the debate, and the themes of criticism that came up from the other two candidates were he's inexperienced and his comments on the Middle East are problematic. Are those likewise the same issues that you want to talk to him more about? What's left unsaid between the two of you?
Well, I've certainly already publicly communicated and privately communicated some of my concerns with respect to some of the views that he's expressed in terms of foreign policy.
In terms of foreign policy, not New York, not New Yorkers, not the free buses, the grocery stores, cost of living for New Yorkers. No, foreign policy. Because of what he said about Israel. So Hakeem got to go. You guys figure out what you need to do in New York. Y'all need to run somebody else. Hakeem Jeffries need to get up out of that seat. He next to go. Next on the chopping block, right there. When we look at the next episode, what we are seeing is that, and I think Hakeem is realizing this, is that, you know what? Nowadays, shaking hands with Benjamin Netanyahu, baby killer here. Look at how he's looking up to Benjamin Netanyahu. I so admire this guy. Shaking hands with Netanyahu, sitting down with members of the Knesset, taking photos with this war criminal, this genocidal maniac. Guess what? That's not a good selling point nowadays. That's what Hakeem is realizing. And honestly, that's why I believe he gave that endorsement to Zohran. No other reason more, I think. I think that's why. Things are changing, folks. Things are changing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got one more story for you. Smash the like button if you haven't had a chance to do so. And we're going to dive into the premiere story of tonight. Can we go ahead and pull that up, Eric, when you get a chance? We have an update with the Charlie Kirk shooting deal. And when we talk about the next episode, we are no longer talking about who did this, who did that. We got to talk about new characters now. We got new characters involved. And people need to see this because I never heard of this guy, this Mikey McCoy guy. And then also, I am going to explain to you what they are trying to do to Tyler Robinson's trial. So right now, they have announced, the judge has announced that they do not want cameras in the courtroom during Tyler Robinson's trial. Why not? Let's get into it. It was announced, of course, on Fox News. Pay attention to what they choose to focus on, by the way.
In Utah this afternoon, a judge will hear arguments on whether Tyler Robinson can wear plain clothes during proceedings. Robinson's defense team is also seeking to limit media coverage of the trial, including a ban on cameras in the courtroom. Donna Rotano is a criminal defense attorney and Fox News contributor. My first thought is how difficult this is going to be for Charlie Kirk's family, for his wife, his parents, to go through this trial. But to have the defense seeking to allow him to present in plain clothes, what is the case they're making for him for that?
Sure. Good afternoon, Sandra. How are you? So here's the issue when it comes to clothing. Obviously, the main purpose here for the defense is to try to get a fair and impartial jury. And if potential jurors watching news coverage of this on a regular basis are seeing Mr. Robinson brought out in prison clothes or jail clothes, then obviously they're looking at him as someone who is in custody. The goal is that the jury doesn't make a determination about custody until obviously after a trial is done and someone is sentenced. So the purpose is to make him look like a regular citizen so he can be judged fairly and impartially based on the evidence alone. And although it seems like a small detail, you don't want him to look like someone who has already been convicted prior to having that happen. So it's really
So notice what they chose to focus on. They chose to focus on, oh, well, the defense wants Tyler Robinson to wear plain clothes. They chose to focus on that instead of the fact that the judge doesn't want you to have cameras in that courtroom. Why not? What is it that they don't want you to see? They're already trying to limit this case to the press. I'm telling you right now, they're already trying to limit the trial to the press, which means you don't know what you're going to get coming out of this trial, which means that I would not be surprised if they select very few people to come in and to cover that trial. What are they trying to hide? I told you guys from the get-go, I never believed this is the guy. I never saw a gun in his hand. And even if he managed to disassemble the weapon and put it in his book bag and then unassemble it again in the woods, that didn't make any damn sense. Then I found out that you can't even disassemble that type of weapon that way. This thing has been fishy to me from the very get-go. But something else I wanted to dive into a little bit as well. Why is the FBI covering this case? Like, why was the FBI involved? And so I decided to look this up a little bit, right? What determines whether or not the FBI will be involved in a case? So let me show you what I found. Peep this, fam. We're going to do the Cliff Notes version because it is what it is. Okay? Check this out. Federal jurisdiction and circumstances. The FBI has the authority to investigate shootings under the following conditions. All right. So I looked up shooting, specifically shooting. If it's a federal crime, if a shooting is a violation of a federal law, the FBI has a primary jurisdiction. Violation of federal law. Was this shooting a violation of federal law? I don't think it was. Crimes crossing state lines. Cases where a shooting crosses state boundaries automatically involve federal jurisdiction. For example, if a kidnapping is in one state, leads to a murder, and the body is dumped in another. Did Tyler Robinson cross state lines? Wasn't Tyler right there in Utah? No? Yeah? No? I don't think that one would apply. We're brainstorming here together, guys. This is class. We are brainstorming. Shootings on federal land. If a shooting occurs on federal property, such as a national park, military base, or a federal building, they have the authority to investigate. Well, it wasn't on federal land. It was at a university. Here's another one. Victims who are federal officials. The killing of a federal officer, elected official, or a diplomat automatically triggers FBI. So Charlie Kirk wasn't an elected official, wasn't a federal officer. So, I mean, I'm grasping at straws here, guys. I'm just trying to come up with the reason as to why the FBI is involved in this case. Civil rights violations. A shooting that constitutes a hate crime or violates a person's constitutional rights can become a federal case, bringing in the FBI. Was there? Hold on to that one for a second. Hold on. We'll come back. Shooting on tribal lands. The FBI has special jurisdiction to investigate murders on Native American reservations. Come back to this one. A shooting that constitutes a hate crime or violates a person's constitutional rights. So when they said, now you guys got to let me know how you feel about this one, right? Do you believe that the whole story that they came up with about Tyler Robinson, being trans or dating trans person or whatever, remember they came out with that theory before the suspect was even caught. Kash Patel and them on X came out with that theory before they even caught Tyler Robinson. And I would say caught, before he was turned in. Because from what I understand, his parents told on him, right? So it's almost as if they painted that narrative of it being a hate crime so that they could get involved. Now we're going to move on to something else. These are things I just want people to think about because like I told you, this doesn't make any sense to me. We're moving on to the next episode. We've talked about possibility of Israel involvement. We've talked about the possibility of deep state involvement, including CIA, etc. But now we're starting to see there's one guy in particular who did something really strange. This guy is Mikey McCoy, staff member of Charlie's team, did something really weird. And I didn't notice this before, but thanks to James Lee, I noticed it now. We need to pay attention as to how this guy, Mikey McCoy, behaved when this shooting happened. It does not seem normal.
This is footage compiled by Sam Parker. You can see Mikey identified there on the left or standing next to the left of the tent. Charlie.
Pause here. That's him back there. You guys saw back there. We will pause and have to come out now and there because I'm not going to show that actual shooting on here. But Mikey is still at the corner of the tent, right all the way over here where my little cursor is. Okay. All right.
Kirk has just a few seconds left here on this earth, and you can see.
We're going to pause here. And here's Mikey still over here. Okay. Let's come out.
Here, as soon as Charlie is hit.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let's come out. I just don't want to show that on here. Okay. We can come back at this part here. All right. So after he was struck, Mikey McCoy, who was over here, is walking away.
He calling someone. Very odd. He doesn't duck down like everybody else. He doesn't run to Charlie's aid. He literally picks up the phone and turns around and starts walking. Back to the footage one more time.
Again, Charlie killed. Mikey immediately turns and walks away behind the tent. So again, we're back over here towards the corner where that camera is. Okay. And then we'll pop out for just a second. I'll let that play. And then we'll come back in here. And I'm not going to show that on here, you guys, but right over here. So he walks away. Watch, wait for it.
Mikey, one movement, picks up the phone and starts walking. You'll see him disappear.
Right there. There he is right there. Notice how everybody else rushed over to where Charlie Kirk was. The other staff members, they either rushed over to help him or people just ducked down and they ran. Like your natural reaction is going to be, you know what I mean? Now, there could be shock involved. I don't know. But continue watching this.
Appear from view to the back of the tent, and he will reappear in just a few seconds. And there he is again.
That's him right there on the phone.
You can clearly see that he appears to be on the phone with somebody. That is just odd behavior. I'm sorry. It's very, very weird. You know, it's not criminal behavior, but it is very, very weird. You know, he's just so calm.
This is a quick jam-packed little video. In this shot here, Charlie is still on the ground with people around him. And I'm just going to drag through the video to get through to some of the interesting spots. So we've got Mikey McCoy, and he is right here.
Right there, guys. Walking. Like he ain't running, he walking. Now, let me pull out for a second, guys. Let's think about this. Pull out. Let me come out of that for a second. Let me explain. Okay, so somebody just got shot. Either way, you heard gunshot. Bam. Your natural reaction is going to be to do one or two things, right? Get down, get down. This is what they taught us in like active shooter training, right? Get down, or you're going to take off running. He's walking as if somebody just didn't get shot. And he was that close to him when he got shot. It's not like he was like further back in the crowd. You see the crowd disperses. People take off. Like, let me get the hell up out of here. But he walking. Almost as if he's not afraid that he could get hit. That would take some confidence, right? That would take a lot of confidence. But it's weird. It does not make any sense to me. So we'll go back in.
We take it like, I think that's the best I can do with him. Just 2 or 3 frames there.
Once again, he's just walking away. Here it is, another angle. You can see Charlie below being carried into the SUV, and Mikey is in the distance, looks to be still just on the phone, casually strolling away from the scene of the crime.
And at this point, how do you know that the threat has been handled? How do you know the shooter has been captured? How do you know the shooter isn't right around the corner where you're walking to? This is bizarre behavior. It's almost as if he knew that it was all handled. Now, again, not criminal. He didn't do anything that's against the law. But the behavior is strange as hell.
Is that normal? And maybe the bigger question I'm thinking, and you're probably wondering the same thing too, is who was he calling? Well, I did some digging, and according to the New York Times, it was one Erica Kirk. Quote, Miss Kirk was sitting in her mother's hospital room at 11:23 a.m. local time in Phoenix when she saw the number of her husband's longtime assistant, Michael McCoy, appear on her phone. In retrospect, she said she knew the words, "He's been shot," before Mr. McCoy screamed them. According to official records, Charlie Kirk was shot at 12:23 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 11:23 in Phoenix. So if the New York Times is being 100% accurate, the only person that Mikey could have been on the phone with is Erica. So look, maybe Mikey was just doing his job. He's just Mr. Cool, you know, extreme composure in the face of emergency. Some people have that kind of ability. I don't. Some people do. But the weird part in all this that I can't really let go of is that he witnessed practically nothing, right? He saw Charlie get shot, then he picks up his phone, supposedly calls Erica, immediately turns around, walks away. He didn't even look at Charlie, so he would really have no idea of Charlie's condition unless, of course, he was told by somebody. Maybe somebody was feeding him the information as he was on the phone. I don't know. Or the quiet part out loud is maybe he knew something was going to happen before it did. I'm obviously not going to say that, but that would be potentially the only other explanation. But of course, according to his father, Pastor Rob McCoy, he is the senior pastor of Godspeed Calvary Chapel in Thousand Oaks and the co-chair of TPUSA Faith. He says that if anyone is to ask any more questions or even hint at the possibility that Charlie's death might be bigger than just, you know, one crazed lone gunman, well, then we're all just anti-Semites.
So, ladies and gentlemen, speaking of Robert McCoy, I want you to see something that he said. Let's go ahead and bring this in here where he's caught lying. I just showed you the video of where Mikey McCoy was positioned, right? And how he walked away. Okay. So why is his dad saying this?
I'm looking at my son who's 24 years old. Justin's the CFO, chief financial officer, and Mikey's the chief of staff. And I'm watching, the minute Charlie was shot, he called me, says, Dad, Charlie's been shot in the neck. Please call every pastor and pray. I said, okay, son. He has wits about him. He was just directing. He had blood all over him, and he had blood all over him.
No, he didn't. Where is this story coming from? We all just watched the footage. Why is his father saying he had blood all over him? Where is that coming from? As if there isn't real video footage out there that shows that's not the case. Hello? JB says, show us the real McCoy, Sabs. I don't know. Like, let me see how much I can play here because I just don't want to show. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Let me show you right here. Look, watch this.
Also, you got to watch right where I've been showing you Mikey is to see exactly what he is doing. He seems to see Charlie get.
Okay. And then we'll just cut from this part because I don't want to show that part. And then, so again, walks away.
Pop up on the other side of the tent in a second. And again, not running like everybody, just walking. This could be shock, but again, you'd think there'd be some kind of panic and he'd be sprinting, but you're just seeing him walk away.
Where's all the blood that he supposedly has on his shirt? That his dad said, where's all that blood at? And then there's something even more weird. And that's this part. Because I told you guys, right? Now, this is Frank Turek. He was also there. Now, according to him, he says that Mikey called Erica from the hospital. So now listen to this, because some people said, well, he was calling Erica right when that happened. Listen to this.
And that's when the great Mikey McCoy showed up. Actually, he was there just before that happened. And 23 years old. He's calling the vice president. He's calling Erica. He's sending a plane to get Erica. He's talking. He's asking the doctor real hard questions. He's shaking a little bit, but he knows what he needs to do. He said, Charlie would want me to do this. And he just took over. I couldn't be more proud of that man.
Does anybody find it odd that the first response wasn't to call 911? Anybody? Cause like that's my like initial like, oh, call 911. It just, I'm telling you guys, it's all fishy. It's all fishy.
Love that man. 23 years old.
Very impressive guy. We spent some time with him yesterday in the audience, got to see him, meet him on the show. I've been wondering since last Wednesday, how are the guards? Do you know?
The story keeps changing. And then there's something else I want to show you also about Mikey McCoy. Let's make sure we got this lined up here. Yeah. This was shared by Sam Parker. You guys need to see this. When you look at Google Trends, so he was looking at Google Trends, right? And he looked up different names, and you'll see here one of them is Mikey McCoy.
Hey everybody, Sam Parker here. Look, Mikey McCoy has been the subject of a lot of controversy the last couple days. He's been in the news a lot because of his strange reaction at seeing Charlie Kirk being shot, the way he just turns and walks away. And Baron Coleman, the man who has popularized the Google Trends analysis, did a search for Mikey McCoy from the Cayman Islands. Cayman Islands, that tax haven where a lot of people have, bank accounts. And there's a lot of money laundering and money transfers happen from the Cayman Islands.
And a lot of billionaires have those accounts in the Cayman Islands. Why would anyone search for Mikey McCoy's name from the Cayman Islands and wait till you see the date?
And of course, we're not ascribing any guilt to anybody. We're just looking at the data. So I must emphasize that we're not ascribing guilt to anybody. We're not saying anybody did anything nefarious. We don't know. We're just looking at the data. But it is interesting that somebody in the Cayman Islands was searching for Mikey McCoy in August and on September 9th, the day before the assassination. Somebody's searching Mikey McCoy. But I decided to look for more people. And they weren't just looking for Mikey McCoy from the Cayman Islands. Deidre Amaro, the Utah medical examiner, was searched for from the Cayman Islands on July 23rd. George Hodson Zinn, July 9th.
That's the guy who was arrested and they said this was the shooter and he wasn't the shooter. That guy, yeah, the older man, that was George Zinn.
Henry Dell was the first person to ask a question to Charlie Kirk. Okay, that's Henry Dell before Hunter Kozak, and he was searched for on May 31st. Phil Lyman, our friend Phil Lyman, was searched for on June 22nd. But let's keep going. I have more names, so let's just keep going. So these are preliminary results. Like all these, somebody's searching for all of these people from the Cayman Islands. It's kind of wild. Let's push on. Let's do Hunter Kozak. Hunter Kozak. Oh my gosh. There's Hunter Kozak. April 22nd. Well, let's see. Who else is in this group? Let's do Paramount Tactical just for kicks. Gary, he did that interview with Henry Dell, right? So Paramount Tactical. Let's just... Again, I'm not saying anybody's guilty. Oh my gosh. August 5th, Paramount Tactical.
Ladies and gentlemen, look, the next episode is that people are not letting this go. Like they had Charlie Kirk's memorial and everything, but people are not letting this go, folks. And people have a lot of questions, and rightfully so. Like I said, none of us saw Tyler Robinson with a weapon. They just told you this is the guy, he's guilty, so everybody's just supposed to believe it because they told you to. Weird. But people are not letting this go. We are seeing multiple episodes about this. People are starting to research on their own, and it's like, okay, let's look up some more names and see what else happens. Here's a little bit more.
Cayman Islands. This is crazy. Let's do some controls. Let's just do some controls. Let's look for some names that let's use my name. Let's see if my name shows up. Okay, I'm not there. Let's do Charlie Kirk. If somebody is searching for Mikey McCoy because maybe he's part of TPOSA and they're interested in TPOSA, well then Charlie Kirk, very public, very well known. Let's see if he shows up. No Charlie Kirk. That's
weird. That is really weird. So I want to show you a close up because I know it's hard to see on that video. But if we look at the close up here, he said, who doesn't show up in the Cayman Island searches? Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Sam Parker, Brian Davis. Brian Davis is the indictment detective. Who does show up and the date? Mikey McCoy shows up in August 12th, but also the day before the shooting. We already told you about the Tyler Robinson thing. DeAndre, these are all the people that show up. Philip Lyman, George Zinn, Henry Dell, Erica Kirk, Andrew Colvett, Spencer Cox, and he put the date next to all of these. But the one that stands out the most to me is that Mikey McCoy shows up on the day before the shooting. Now, I believe we have images here to show you so that you can see it close up. It's easier to see it this way. So Mikey McCoy is blue. That's the blue line. So if you look at the blue line here, that's September 9th, 2025. Charlie Kirk was killed on September 10th. That's Mikey McCoy, that August 12th and that September 9th. Here's Tyler Robinson right here, July. So you can see all the different ones here, but notice purple for Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk name don't show up at all. So they weren't searching for his name. Anybody find that a little bit strange? If you're looking up Turning Point USA and you're looking into the staff members, but you don't look up the one person who is basically the head of the organization? Really? This, and go here as well. These are other searches. Brillen Hollyhan, that's the guy who I guess was supposed to be like the new Charlie Kirk or whatever. He searched his name, different spellings just to see, but you can see him show up a little bit here. But this is the kicker, guys. Mikey McCoy, September 9th. Now, does this mean that he was involved? No, we don't have evidence to prove that he was involved. What it does show, though, is something is being covered up here, guys. Now we have the Cayman Islands involved in searches. Really weird. Billionaire tax haven. A lot of billionaires have these offshore accounts there. So there's that. Mikey McCoy's name showing up the day before Charlie Kirk was killed. And then on top of this, ladies and gentlemen, we now get to see in that video what Mikey McCoy's response was. It's really weird to me. All these people around you are either ducking or taking off running because they don't want to get shot, but you are walking as if he's the Terminator or something, as if he can't be touched. Now, it could be shock, could be, don't know, but ideally, even when he made it to the parking lot, he was still walking. He's not running. It's almost as if he had no fear. I just don't. And the FBI is not talking about this. Now, let's fast forward back to what I said earlier. Why is the FBI involved in this case? Didn't cross state lines. Didn't happen on federal land. Native American land, didn't happen on federal property. Why is the FBI involved in this case? Has anybody seen an autopsy report? Anybody? Has anybody heard from Charlie Kirk's parents? Anyone? These are the questions we need to ask. Because you see, people are like, okay, I don't think we don't have proof that Israel was involved, etc. But people have not stopped. People are still looking. They moved on to the next episode, and now they're starting to look at the people that were right around him during the shooting and starting to ask, what were you guys up to? People would not ask these questions if we had a transparent government. If the FBI was transparent from the get-go, which they were not, people wouldn't ask these questions. If the FBI actually had video footage that showed Tyler Robinson with the gun, people would be less likely to ask these questions. But they don't have that. They haven't shown you that. And then we have the text messages from Charlie Kirk in that group chat where he was basically saying that he was done with the pro-Israel movement, walking away from that. So just put everything together, folks. And also, this stuff about Erica Kirk. I told you guys, to me, she ain't really acting like someone that's really grieving. Like, I mean, the way she came out there that fast and said, okay, let me get on the podcast and just talk this and all that kind of stuff. I'm just kind of like, usually people in that situation need at least a week. So something is off here, folks. They're covering something up, and now they don't want cameras in the courtroom. Crazy times. Crazy times. All right, Eric's going to come on. He's going to close out the show, and he is going to read the rest of the super chats as well. And that'll be it for me, folks.
All right, and talk about the next episode. Well, first, the next episode in our politics, right, needs to be a mass movement based on clear demands, right?
That's right. That's right. No more. And Dr. Dre and Snoop understood this. They knew, okay, we made the Chronic, but now we're moving on to the next episode. It's time for something different, right? So that's the thing, is like, we really do need a movement, you guys. And I think we can have it, considering the fact that we had massive number of people out in the streets for the pro-Palestinian rallies. But we need a mass movement. Mm-hmm.
And what'll be the
All
next demand for Sabby? The next episode for Sabby Sabs will be what, Tuesday, right?
Yeah, Tuesday. I think Scott Ritter is coming back. Give us some updates on what's happening with Venezuela. So we'll be touching on that, among other stories. So it should be interesting.
Okay. All right.
a good
We'll let
night,
our
guys.
Sabby go, and we'll do a show close here. We got some chats built up. All right. And let me kick this thing around. Whoop, wrong one. I hit the wrong. No, there we go. Yeah, we're right. All right. Yeah. So, like when we were talking about the next episode, and yeah, we come back to the always the idea of those demands, and it's the idea that it's going to need to be a big movement. Like, no Zohran or no uniparty politician's going to save us. We need to save ourselves, and that's what a movement is about. All right, let's look at some of these super chats, and some of these go back to the previous story. All right, thanks for the super chat, Susanna, who says Elon has definitely been spoken to. Algorithms have been changed. Yeah, and I think it comes down to that concept of interests, right? There's the interests of the billionaires, the top 0.1%, and there's the interests of the 99%. And it's really no mystery whose interests Elon is into and working on. And so to me that's like the core thing. Which interest? Thanks for the super chat, Dr. Susan Jacob, who says the U.S. killed 2 million Iraqi citizens, quote, because 9/11, even though Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Does Scott, meaning Scott Jennings, ever mention those victims? Yes, good point, Susan. Thanks for that. And thanks for this one, William Alec, who says, I don't trust any of them liars, neither for the USA. And thanks, Makeup Professional. This is the best non-biased political channel. Keep up the good work. Love from Norway. Well, thank you. And I'll love to see eyeballs coming in from Norway and all over the place. And thanks for this, William. He says, Zohran must take the gloves off and call out everything. And thanks for the super chat, Cheetah. Speaking about that brother, Sammy Hamdi from Britain, the political analyst, just been detained at San Francisco airport. I think that is by ICE. All right. Thanks for that one. And thanks for this super chat, Demetrius, who says, why do you guys keep falling for these fake leftists like Memdami? The DSA are just a bunch of DNC libs who give socialism a bad name. Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I think if you look at this show and what 11 Demands has been saying, um, I don't think I don't think it could be fairly characterized as we're falling from Mdami, um, but yeah, it's a game. Is I think really where personally myself and Sabrina, where the show lands is that no, it's not. There's not some Democrat or some Republicans that's going to come in and save us and fix things. It's going to have to be a demands-based movement to really get somewhere. It's going to, we're going to have to save ourselves. And so yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about Mdami and how this New York City mayor vote is going to go, but we're always going to come back to saying it's not the answer, right? It's not the fix. The fix is to focus on the corruption, to have a movement that's about demands to root out the corruption and have a government that actually works for us. That needs to be our core. Thanks for the super chat, Brad Gilbert. Why Charlie Kirk get flown out of AF2? He's not an official. All right. And thanks for this one, Marvin. Assassination be foreign nation. Iran know who. Okay. And thanks for the super chat, Clarissa Palmore. Appreciate the workshop access. I missed the Zoom. All right. Appreciate your interest in the mutual aid workshop. And thanks also for this one, Brad. Wait until you realize it's a squib. They faked it. All right. And thanks for this one, Brad. He says he told Erica squib worked. Everyone's fooled. All right. And thanks for the super chat, William Elek. Frank is a typical psychopath, fake, sorrow, bad liar. And thanks for this one from Brad. MK still MSM CIA asset reassigned. Stoked black hate over staged Iranian murder where actress neck never bleeds and killer used his thumb, no knife. And thanks for this one, Chris Bedford, who says, would be interesting if someone arranged a James O'Keefe style honeypot date and got one of these searched people to spill the beans over drinks. And thanks for this one, Sparky. If Charlie Kirk's staff are eschatological Christian Zionists like Mike Huckabee, they want to bring about the apocalypse in hopes of Jesus's return. So selling out their friend is nothing to them. Interesting theory there. The thing about it is what the only way we would really, as a populace, let's say, as U.S. citizens, get to the bottom of this is to have a non-corrupted, or a much less corrupted government investigate it and really do a real investigation, transparent, open, public investigation. Of course, there should be cameras in the courtrooms and everything should be transparent and dig down to the bottom of it. That's what our government is supposed to do for us, is things like that. Our current government is just serving the billionaire class and, the huge corporations, which are basically the same thing. And so that's why with these things, I always come back to that core demand of that we have to decorrupt the government to really get to the bottom of this. And so, yeah, I think we should go over all these things and talk about them and hash them out, but also then at the end say, and if we don't get to a real demands-based mass movement that fixes the government, then we're not going to get to real resolutions and real answers and solutions and these things. I saw in there's a recent interview Sabby did with Richard Wolff, which I'd recommend everyone check out. It was a pre-recorded interview that she posted, and one thing I noticed is the top upvoted comment on that interview was one that was saying, okay, we get this stuff, but what are the solutions? And so, part of, my thing personally is to try to have real answers to that. And I would say, the solutions is that demand-based mass movement, and that it's up to all of us to make it happen, to not just say, oh, it sucks and nothing is happening. It's each of us can look, to ourselves and say, well, what can we do? What can I do personally can be part of how this mess gets fixed. All right, I'm just bringing up another one here. We got one here from the Rumble rant. Thanks for the rant on Rumble. Hey, Ataya. And appreciate that. And who says, great opinion and analysis is always Sabby, peace and love. And thanks, appreciate you. And then I think I can pull one up here on the Rockfins. Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Roger. This went back. This was a few minutes ago, a while back, but thanks for the tipped comment on Rockfin. Roger says, Matt is the epitome of insecure white males with testosterone deficiency and no ability to grow muscles. All right. Thanks for that one, Roger. Get this thing looking. And I think that just about wraps us for tonight. Hey, let me catch this chat here from, man, here we go. New York Varsity Sports Jason, who was kind enough to have Corey and I on his show the other day. It's up on his channel. If you search YouTube New York Varsity Sports, you'll see it. He says, thanks for coming on the podcast. Dealing with the algorithm should be solved Tuesday, but keep sharing. All right. I think he's talking about his issues with YouTube and how YouTube will come after you. And the one other thing I wanted to put up here, is from the 11demands.com website. One of the things in here that that I really encourage people who are thinking about these things and solutions and how to talk about things towards a solution is the old MCDS. And there's a special page here for it, right? 11demands.com .org or .com, get you there, /MCDS, Money Corruption Demand Solutions. It's a framework for understanding how our government really works and how we can fix it. And you can, I would encourage people to go in here and check it out. The details at their leisure, but it's basically money and corruption. Always focus on those things to understand how things really work. And that should take you to demands. That's why we have the D in MCDS. Having that clear list of demands is crucial. Fixing the big money in politics and government needs to be at the top. And then flowing from there, you get solutions, because once you know the big money and the corruption are the big problem, then that's that leads you to how you fix it, right? Because let's say, we're saying, okay, our demand is to fix the money and the corruption. How do we fix that? Okay, well, if you look at the list, number one, fix the big money. It gets about passing campaign finance laws, clean elections. I mean, imagine if we just had it as part of a movement, we keep saying we need clean elections. I mean, that would be really powerful. You need that constitutional amendment, because as long as the Supreme Court says money is speech, they're going to strike down good campaign finance and regulations. And of course, it's about regulating that campaign spending and lobbying, prosecute the corruption, ban the revolving door politics, and demand radical transparency. These things are really not difficult or hard to come up with, complicated to solve at a base level. It's about demanding an end to the corruption and working together to make it happen. So MCDS, 11 Demands, feel free to check it out. Of course, we're going to keep talking about it and more things around here. But until then, we're going to see you all next time. Like we were saying, the next episode of the Sabby Sabs Show will be Tuesday at 7 p.m. Sounds like we'll have Scott Ritter and plenty of more topics to talk about. And thanks everyone for watching and listening to me for a few minutes. Always appreciate that. And we will see you all next time. And have a good night and keep up that fight. Thanks everyone.